the body goes to sleep, everything else shuts down. Our perceptions, our ability to see and hear and understand. I think what is being shown in neuroscience and what we know from just the conditions of our body when we're sick, if we have a virus or bacteria, it really changes our whole disposition and our interaction with the world. Drugs can fundamentally change how you interact with the world just because it's changing the chemical components of the brain. So I think definitely that we can't pretend like this free float, if there is this free floating Atma, that we can know it as something totally independent of. We can know it in a way totally independent of the body and the mind.
Thank you. That was a tough question, I know. We'll go on with Paul. This is actually from one of your students, Paul. So in addition to the question, the student has given me a professor's feedback that has to go to your dean, by the way. Okay. Can you explain Nadi in Nadi Chitta?
What does the questioner mean?
I'll explain this a bit more. Can you explain Nadi in Nadi Chitta? Nadi in Ayurveda means vein or life vein. I would like to know the meaning of Nadi with regards to Chitta. Chitta is a function of the mind.
Okay, well about nadis, of course, this word is not nadi chitta or chitta nadi, this is chitta nadi. The nadi, feminine word meaning river. River of the chitta. Chitta nadi, not nadi. Nadi is...
So this is what happens, right? When an ignorant like me asks you a question, I get swept away by the river.
So I can't say much about nadis and the chakra system or the veins in the body, but the river of the mind, that's another.
This one is for Jai Krishna. How do you compare the concept of Sakshi with the notion of intuition? Are they the same? Sakshi and intuition.
Intuitive knowledge. Intuition, what would be the right word in Sanskrit for intuition? Anybody? Spurti. Okay, Anubhava, experiential. Your experiential type of knowledge belongs to Sakshi. Okay? That's why it is doubtless. So from time immemorial, the indeterminations of the mind are being arbitrated by Sakshi and making it valid. When Sakshi illumines that, it becomes doubtless. So intuition, if it is the experiential type, then it belongs to Sakshi. Whereas, if you are looking at something and thinking it is something, that is the first instinct of the mind that's coming. It can be wrong at times. We all know it.
Thank you. Well, you can actually keep the mic on. There's one more for you.
All right?
How are unimaginable things comprehended by the mind?
Unimaginable. Why did you say that? You have already imagined it. Somebody has imagined. Now, for example, human beings, we have been given with them avikshnam sankalpaha. The mind is fast, it's eager, it goes out all the time in different ways. It's very wavering, and it is eager to get things. So what happens is, it sometimes imagines things that are not there. We cannot even take the Atyantava, like the one he was mentioning, the rabbit having a horn. This is actually somebody imagined. It's an imaginary thing. But some artist actually drew it. You can always draw a picture of a rabbit having a little this thing. But whatever has come to the artist's mind will not get its reality. There is a creator. If it comes to his mind, it will get reality. That's how it works.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is for Professor Edelman. The split brain experiments by Roger Sperry appear to suggest that the left and the right brain suggest a self in each hemisphere. How does this relate to your research? Let me repeat this. The split brain experiments by Roger Sperry appears to suggest that the left and right brains have a self in each hemisphere. How does this relate to your research?
I'm not familiar with that particular person, but I have heard about and seen documentation of the split brain. This is when the center piece of the brain that separates the left and the right hemispheres is damaged or removed in some ways, or sometimes people are born without them. There'll be a situation where you'll cover up one eye and the right side of your brain will be used, and you cover up the left side, and the other side of the brain is used, and people would be able to recognize faces with this eye, but not with that eye, or they'll be able to remember vegetable names using one side of the brain, but using the other side they can't. There's a variety of different experiments like this, and I think this goes to show really how much the Atman is using the body, and depending, I think that's so much of the reason why you get analogies to the body is like a chariot, which would have been the most sophisticated piece of machinery at these times. I think today people would want to use something like a computer. But why is the body repeatedly referred to as like a chariot and the world is like a yantra? Because chariots are the sorts of things that when the wheel is broke, the driver can't drive as smoothly. Or if the left rein pulling that you pull the horses with is broken, you can't pull the horses left. Likewise, if certain portions of the brain are not functional, or not developed, as in childhood. I have a 2-year-old son right now, 2.5 years old. He goes nuts after things like chocolate, and he loves to see trucks, and his language skills are so rudimentary, but I've seen them develop from he was there when he was seconds old. What's going on is that the Atman is slowly manifesting itself as that little baby brain starts to grow and complexify. And we've all had that experience. We all remember being young when our brains and our bodies were not very well developed, and getting older and things. I'm at a point in my life where it's about as good as it's going to get. It's pretty much downhill from here. It's going to be pretty good for a few years. Gray hair starts to come in. But we will watch our bodies deteriorate, and capacities that we once had, we'll see them slowly go away until you're dead. And it maybe will start all over again. So I think split brain is just all it is confirming experiences that we've already had, that so much of our thought processes, our ability to have higher philosophical thoughts, more refined moral reflections about how we deal with friends and family and the world in general, they're all so much a function of us having bodies that are adults. Children just don't think about those things because they don't have the hardware to do it. That's my understanding at this point.
Thank you. This one is actually for you again.
I'd be curious what all the others want to say about this too.
They'll get their chance. Yeah, just hold on. You mentioned spiritual body in your presentation. Given that body is physical, isn't spiritual body an oxymoron?
I don't know if this is true for the Madhva tradition. I think there's some suggestions that this is true for Ramanuja, but I really don't know what Madhva, Jaitirtha, and these great acharyas said about this. But at least I can say for sure, in the Gaudiya tradition, they recognize guna. The Vishva, the world, is made out of gunas, Trigunamai. But they also say that there's something called gunatita. They are very committed to the idea that Sri Krishna is formed. He has a body. It's tangible. The Gaudiyas write very elaborate poetry. It's there in the Bhagavatam. People were touching Krishna's body, smelling Krishna's body, hearing his flute. But the idea is that it's Shuddha Sattva. Sattva as a guna is the most pure form of Prakriti. But they want to say that there's something Shuddha Sattva that is beyond Brahman, Brahman as a non-dual reality. And within Bhagavan, who has this gunatita deha, who has a Shuddha Sattva body, at the same time there's a whole world there. And this is coming from the root verses are there in the Bhagavatam, the Pratama Skanda, I think it's in the Sapta Adhyaya, the 6th chapter, where it talks about Narada, who upon arriving at Vaikuntha, the verse says that Bhagavan took him and gave him a body. And Jiva Goswami and other in Vishwanath and other Gaudiya commentaries are committed to the idea that there are these spiritual bodies that are, as I said, gunatita, Shuddha Sattva, they're nitya, they don't deteriorate. I don't know if we can even make sense of that. It's but that's what they say. And then when the soul gets into that body, because it has its own innate ego, ahankara is not just part of Prakriti. Jiva Goswami is committed to the idea that the Purusha has its own ahankara. And because it has its own ahankara, it's a real ahankara. He calls it the ahamartha. Because it has this, when it's presented with a spiritual body, it can latch onto that. But that latching onto that spiritual body, Jiva Goswami said, is nitya. There's no separation, unlike the ahankara that we have for these bodies. It's going to obviously be broken at any moment.
Thank you. This one is for the question is, how would you define in your own words Atman? And after you, Jai Krishna, the same question for you.
I don't have a definition handy.
Okay, that's fine. We'll pass it on.
Eternal consciousness.
All right. How do you define an apple? Anybody? You have seen an apple. You have not seen an Atma though, but you know you have seen an apple, you have eaten it. So if somebody asks you the question, how do you define an apple? What will you say? There are a set of unique attributes in a certain fruit which we have called apple. Is it not so? That's what an apple is. In Sanskrit, that is called the Swarupa of that Vastu Swarupa. Similarly, Atma, Jivatma, has his own Swarupa. Atma as Paramatma has his own Swarupa, which is quite different from Jivatma's Swarupa. What is the Swarupa of Jivatma? That's what you are essentially asking. It is Satchidananda Swarupa. Sat, Chit, Anand. Because we, our Swarupa, by our own Swarupa, we can't say the three are different, because what is called Savishesha Veda, the three can be talked about as though he has three separate attributes. Actually, they are integrated into one, where there is identity, this Veda Karya, that is the Vishesha. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the doctrine of Vishesha here, but the point is, Satchidananda Swarupa is Atma. That's what Atma is.
Thank you, sir. Here's another interesting question. Any one of you can pick this up. Why do bad things happen to good people?
They don't.
While you're contemplating that answer, I would like to give a grand and a warm welcome to Sri Bananjay Govindacharya. As a background, he's one of the greatest experts on the Dvaita philosophy. He's best known for his various discourses and various lectures and books around Vedanta. 60 books he has authored in a 6-decade lifespan, and he continues to do that. He continues to spread the message of God. His literary achievements include his translation and commentaries on the complete text of Sri Acharya Madhva. Titles conferred on him include the Padma Shri, which is and the list goes on and on and on what he's being conferred with. We're honored to have him here, and after this Q&A session is over, actually Swamiji would be honoring Sri Govindacharya as well. So
Now I am even more nervous. What was the question again?
why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, depends on what is bad and good. It's kind of hard to define and demarcate it, because what appears to be bad sometimes is good for you. For example, a poor man who has to cut wood for a living, he has good muscles. Hello. He doesn't have to go to any gymnasium like I have to. Because I don't cut wood for a living. I sit on a desk and write something. Therefore, what appears to be bad may be actually good. What appears to be good may not be that good after all. As Purandaradasa, he will tell you. What we think is good, he just didn't want it. Gave it all away, just like that. Therefore, our distinction of good and bad and our understanding of God, that's what makes the difference. Isho yato guna dosha sattva. He is above, God is above our distinction of good and bad. That's how we'll get. And as Keshav Rao was mentioning this morning, for a knowledge ego, if somebody else is inflicting bad things on him, That's because they are taking away his sins and they are accumulating sins. Similarly, the other way. You heard it this morning. That's why good and bad things happen.
Thank you. Jonathan, you want to add anything to that? Paul? Do you want to add anything to that question? Okay. We'll have one more question here, and then we'll go to the end of the program. Go ahead. Feel free.
So Bhagavatam has a good verse about the attitude towards what appear to be bad things. Tatenu kampang susunikshamano punjane evadmakritam vipakam. When things happen which appear to be bad, we should consider it as our atmakritam vipakam, as the kind of the mess, whatever, that's been created by my own self. So rather than pointing the finger out towards others, we should point the finger back towards ourselves. And then the second step recommended in the verse is Tatenu kampam susamikshamano, that we should very intently examine where susamikshamano, looking very closely, we should try to find the prasad, the mercy of God in whatever is happening to us. So first thing, not to blame anyone else but ourselves. And secondly, try to find the silver lining or the teaching moment in the event, whatever it is. I think that's a very useful verse for our attitude towards whatever happens.
You want to add anything? Very good. Well, we covered pretty much the key intent and a concise approach to all the questions that we had here. Now, we would like to take a few minutes and say thank you to all the three speakers. So let's give them a big applause. Jonathan's actually flying back, so we'd like to take this opportunity for Swamiji actually to honor Jonathan Edelman. Because I have a few words by Swamiji.
Before concluding, I want to share two things, two compliments for this unique session. One is when day before yesterday I was starting from Bangalore. I just got the newspaper and I went through the newspaper, and in front line only I saw the one article that is connected to the session. I can read in Kannada, that is Savina Nantara Jiva, the ವಿಜ್ಞಾನಿಗಳ ಪುರಾವೆ. ಸಾವಿನ ನಂತರ ಜೀವ ಇರುತ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗುತ್ತದೆ ಎಂಬುದು ಚಿರಂತನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು. ಈ ಕುರಿತು ಧರ್ಮ, ಪುರಾಣ ಮತ್ತು ತತ್ವಶಾಸ್ತ್ರೀಯ ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳು ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಹೇಳಿವೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇದೀಗ ಲಂಡನ್ ತಜ್ಞರು ವ್ಯಾಪಕ ಸಂಶೋಧನೆ ನಂತರ ಸಾವಿನ ಬಳಿಕವೂ ಜೀವ ಇರುತ್ತದೆ ಎಂದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಲವಾದ ಪುರಾವೆಗಳನ್ನು ಒದಗಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. When I was starting from Bangalore, particularly for this program I was coming, and I thought this is the compliment for the session where I am starting from Bangalore. So I want to share this with all of you here. And I'm very glad to conclude this day session. And the second compliment is our Bananja Govindacharya. This is a sign that is the session is accepted by Lord Sri Krishna, because Krishna is sending the connected person to declare that it is reached to me. So from the morning we have the discussions and after discussions. So during that time, if a big scholar comes, it says that it has reached to Lord Sri Krishna. So I am welcoming as a representative of Lord Krishna from Udupi, the first time to the Sri Krishna Vrindavan. And today, when Bananji Govinda Acharya had come, then Nelamangala had nervous because he was named as Bananji Govinda Acharya. Now he has become the pseudo Bananji. So I'm very glad to have all three scholars here who have given the great lectures, and it is preservable, and I'm very glad to congratulate them and felicitate them here. And also I'm very glad to have our staffer Betty who started the discussion here, and this is the title I can get from Nelamangala, that East meets West. So today it has come true in Sri Krishna Vrindavan, the very first time in the history of Krishna Vrindavan, or maybe in the history of US, United States. The Eastern scholars and traditional scholars are meeting the Western scholars. I think this is the bridge we have from India to US, and like Anjaneya, he found Sita in Lanka, and we are like Anjaneya, we are finding knowledge here also in US. So the bridge is built by Anjaneya here, so that many Jnana they can walk either way here to there, so that the bridge will be strengthened and two nations will be strengthened, totally the society will be strengthened. So I am very glad to conclude this session, and tomorrow also we are going to conclude that, and we will see more people than today tomorrow.
We'll now honor Jonathan. If you could. Thank you for coming all the way from Mississippi and sharing your experience in your research. Thank you. We'll take a small break. You can still be here because tea and coffee will be served while arrangements get done for the sitar recital. Okay. Yeah, there's being reminded again that there will be a talk by Sri Bananjaya Govindacharya. We will announce it when that's getting ready, but over here, just be seated here for the recital. Another thing, there was a question that came up, I should have mentioned this. People are asking, or I was told that people are asking, how could any contributions or donations be made to the temple? If you're interested, please write a check in favor of SRCF. SRCF. Thank you.
When was the last time you felt? I beg your pardon? When was the last time you felt God? That I felt God? Not since I've been in New Jersey.
I'll tell you why. It's got to do with the traffic here.
It has to do, not only that, it has to do with just being out of one's home. It really helps to have one's meditation room and have time set apart and have a routine. I haven't been able to find that yet.
Thank you. The same one to Ms. Tharpa, if she can.
The invisible hand of God, you can see it, you can feel it. The very thought that goes through our mind, the way we talk, the way we arrange the words, what to talk, what to think. If we think about it, we can feel the invisible hand of God everywhere. He's right, as you said, He's right here. He's not somewhere in Vaikuntha or something. And He's protecting us. And many times we see in our life, we give up so many things. We think we cannot do it. But suddenly something changes through somebody. God we cannot see. But through people, through gurus, He guides us, He helps us. So we feel it. We do feel it.
This one is for Dr. Puri. Have you experienced bad people in your life? No, there's a follow-up question, but first answer that.
Oh,
Have you
of
experienced?
course.
You have.
The worst person I've experienced bad is myself.
Okay. Move a bit farther there. I'm not sitting next to it. Okay, so let's go on to the second part of the question. Why do you think good things then happen to bad people? If a person's bad, why do you think good things happen to him or her?
We can judge good or bad according to some standard, inner standard that we have. But, for instance, many people think that why is there evil in the world? If there is a God, why should there be evil? But how do we judge good and evil? If a population of deer, for instance, in the forest increases to a certain point, they become destructive of the forest, they become self-destructive. And so it's not good. According to even Darwin's theory of evolution, there's a struggle for existence, and when that struggle reaches a certain point, just for the greatest benefit of the whole, there is some destruction that occurs. So what we call evil in the world is from our individual finite point of view. We judge something to be good or evil. Volcanoes erupt, and many people may be killed. Tsunamis come and kill many people. But these are products of the nature. Nature acts in certain ways to keep its balance. That helps the entire planet to maintain its balance. And it is not all about us. This is the main thing. We call it history. History. The events that occur in this planet and throughout time, we call it his story. It's not my story. There is a center to reality, and that is not us. That is God, and we are the servants. We are to serve His purposes, whatever they may be. We may not be aware of them, but it's not our privilege to have that awareness. That's called achintya. His own reasons are there, and we have to accept that. One who has faith, God knows that and abides by that, and doesn't make judgments about others except Himself.
Thank you. There's one more for you.
Okay.
Do you believe being and nothing is the same as God? Or can you associate being and nothing to God?
Yes, as I mentioned, we think of being as some type of impersonal substance. But the concept of being God is presenting is that being is thinking. And thinking is something that is mysterious to us. How do we think? How does thought occur? What is it? Scientists can't answer that question. Right? So thinking has its own mystical quality. And it is a thing, it is the rationality that we even understand that the thing is God. God is only understood by human beings. Animals don't understand. Although they have some type of reasoning, they don't have the type of rationality that we have. That finer rationality that produces literature, language, and so forth. So the whole idea of religion of God comes from this thinking, this superior thinking that man has. And so certainly God is implied by thinking, and is thinking himself and person. Just like the idea of Brahman is some kind of impersonal substance is not shared by this concept of thinking itself.
I'll ask you a follow-up and then give you a break. So you have the atheist philosophers or teachers, Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, who talk about the universe came from nothing.
Right.
I think they've written a couple of books as well on that. The universe has come from nothing. How different is that nothing from the nothing that you are describing?
Yes.
They call themselves atheists by saying that the universe came from nothing, whereas you are equating being and nothing to God.
Well, first of all, the nothing they're talking about is not nothing. The nothing that they say everything came from is called the vacuum state, the quantum theoretical idea. And the vacuum state is not really nothing. It's what would you call it, a cancellation of matter and antimatter, what they call matter and antimatter. So the vacuum is full of matter and antimatter, and because they're of opposite, just like being and nothing, that's their being and nothing, and they cancel each other. But as I'm saying, that cancellation of being and nothing, that is the skeptical attitude, which or the atheistic attitude, can be seen in a more positive way, an affirmative way, not as nothing, but as becoming. So the reality is not that it's a static thing and everything is static that we see around us. Actually, everything is alive and moving, growing, developing. That's here and also there. It's that of that nature. It's a becoming and not a being. It is a misconception to think in terms of being. It's impersonalism to think of Brahman as mere being or nothing, mere nothing. It is not. It's the interaction of these things that produces everything.
Thank you, Dr. Puri. The next one is for Srimati Tadapatri. What is Acharya Madhva's reasoning on God's creation of eternally condemned souls, among others? I'll repeat. You want me to repeat it?
No, that's fine.
It's fine?
About the eternally condemned souls.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically Madhva's concept is its intrinsic nature. It gives an example. You take a neem seed. You take a beautiful, sweet mango seed. The neem seed, the neemness, the bitterness is intrinsic. It's not eccentric. It is embedded in that. So same as the soul. Souls is unchanging. It's intrinsic. So there is all types of souls, good, bad, and in between souls.
Okay. We'll continue question to Professor Bedi on a similar line. Can you elaborate your stand on why God should change the intrinsic nature of the soul? So we just heard that the
Yes.
soul is...
No, I follow you. That's, I suppose, is the basic optimism that I bring to the world in my small way. I'm a deeply optimistic person, and I like to think of those who are apparently lost, and I'm well aware of the crime that's all around us. All one has to do is read the newspapers about ISIS, and you see the horrors that men are capable of inflicting upon each other. Are these fiends, these monsters, these criminals, irredeemable? We do know that there are some remarkable turnarounds, stories of remarkable turnarounds of criminals who go to jail and change themselves rather radically to the surprise of many. So my hope is that given enough time and enough lives, this process of radical change, of radical turn away from evil to good, is a possibility. Indeed, I would like to think of it as something that is inevitable, because I think that God's grace is so consistently and persistently present, that God never gives up on anyone, that God is the hound of heaven, and eventually we succumb to that grace. Not because we're forced to, but because we simply find it charming and delightful and beautiful, and that no one is lost. However, I quite agree with Swamiji that the evidence is not necessarily on my side. But I think that the logic of who God is, God the great lover of his creatures, the great lover of his sons and daughters, would seem to suggest that. I would also remind us all that I think most of us here feel that at one point we came from an animal realm, that we have grown beyond the animal kingdom into humanhood. If Madhva is correct, then that would mean that from the very beginning, snails were essentially good, bad, or indifferent. And I find that rather astonishing, frankly, and simply intuitionally invalid. So I really don't have much to offer except what I've said, and I certainly don't think of it as any way of being a final contradiction of Swamiji's views and of the views of Madhva. I hope they're incorrect. That's basically where I stand.
As I said, it's if you have a neem seed, you change the neem seed into a mango seed, it amounts to killing the very neem seed. Neem seed doesn't exist. God, Vedas say that it preserves. He protects the nature of the soul. What he is referring to is about the external influence. Due to the external influence, the surroundings that we live due to our prior karma, even a good person can do many, many bad things. That's external to him, not intrinsic. So there is a scope for him to change. But if the very nature, the very intrinsic nature is bad, you can change them because it is the very soul. God, even God, as Swamiji says, he is Satya Sankalpa. He doesn't change the rules. He's more powerful, but he will not change it. That is, as Swamiji says, this fact. We may not like it. That's what it is.
Good, Stefan.
Your reasoning is impeccable, I grant that. But what's in question is whether or not there really is this intrinsic difference built into the souls. That's what's in question here. And I don't think that we can be certain of that. I don't think that's something we can know certainly. That would be my final say-so on this.
I would probably agree with you, at least just for this moment, so that even in New Jersey you can start feeling God. Because I want you to feel God here, particularly in Krishna Vrindavan.
So I'm a little worried about my intrinsic nature at this point.
Okay, well, the next one is to Srimati Tadapatri. So I'll make this question more relevant to you. Sorry, Stafford, it's to Srimati Tadapatri. So you're a learned soul, right? You're a learned soul, you have been speaking so well. Would you carry your knowledge and jnana to the next birth?
Definitely. Acharya says and Gita says, Neha Vikramanasti Pratyavayana. That is, Salpamapi Dharmasya Trayato Mahatava. Even a little in Vishnu Dharma, the greatness of Vishnu Dharma is even a very thought about Vishnu. You see Vishnu, you see God's invisible hand everywhere. It doesn't go waste. Even the Sankalpa, even you take, tomorrow I'll do this, I'll study scripture, whatever you say, even for that Sankalpa doesn't go waste. It is carried to the next Janma, definitely. And God says that in Gita itself, He says that He won't leave it, He will bring it back, even if we err this way or that way. The compassionate Lord will bring you back in the right path if your intrinsic nature is good. Nothing goes waste.
What would you then suggest for someone who is really not as learned as you in their current life? How would they continue?
You never know. In my own life, I've seen it. Before my wedding, I was sort of atheistic, or I wouldn't call myself as a Dvaitian before wedding. So things changed. The questioning, pariprashnena sevaya. So the questioning, we always used to discuss. I always used to, my father-in-law said, you want to have something discussion in your life, you want to have some talk in your life, take an opposite stand and argue with him. That's what I did. I had lots of questions. It took me a long time to get convinced. So there is hope. You never know. Each karma is like what you call a fixed deposit. Each one matures at the right time. A flower blooms at the right time. So we never know which karma. Tomorrow you will become a great jnani. Who knows? So there is hope. There is hope. We should not give. The very reason that we are assembled here, as someone said, it indicates there is hope. There is definitely hope, and nothing goes waste. We never know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. That goes exactly opposite to the eternally condemned soul concept of Madhvacharya.
No, here I am not talking
One
about...
minute. Sir, just write your question on an index card, pass it on.
Okay. Okay, the thing is, I mentioned there is, we talk about Swabhava and Prabhava. Swabhava is what is your very intrinsic nature. Prabhava is the external influence. This we see it, even good people in a bad company. We change, we do bad things, but eventually we become good. That is Prabhava. External, if there is external influence, you make mistakes and you come back. If it is Swabhava, it doesn't change. A neem seed remains a neem seed, no matter what you do.
Thank you. But just in case, very valid question. If you have, please write it down on a card and pass it along. This one's to Stafford. How do the three schools of thought view the distinction of souls between men and women? Do they both have equal potential? Is gender a factor? Are women superior even over there as they are here? The last one I added, by the way.
You know, I'm not sure what Madhva says on this point. It may well be that he is a member of the Hindu school. I don't know if it's a school, but it's a point of view, it's a fairly common point of view that women have to be born as men in their last life to have a chance at moksha. I don't think that that is Madhva's view, but I wonder if any of you know differently. I would hope that it's not his view, and I don't think it's Shankara's, and I don't think it's Ramanuja's either, though I could be wrong on that point. If that is a part of any of their thinking, it's a very minor part of their philosophies. At the very worst, it would mean that a woman has to postpone moksha by one lifetime. She has to come back as a male. I have seen that point of view, but I don't think the great thinkers subscribe to that. I think that's more like a popular view among some less illuminated souls, in my opinion. So I don't think there's any difference as far as I know.
Okay, very good. I'll have all the three of you comment on that. Go ahead, Dr. Puri.
Actually, we're all women. According to Bhagavad Gita, according to Krishna's teaching, we are called Para Prakriti. Prakriti is feminine. And we are the Shakti of the Lord. We are not a Vishnu Tattva. We are Tatashta Shakti. Tatashta Shakti means the marginal energy. And Shakti is feminine. We are not the independent enjoyers in this world. We are meant to be enjoyed by Him. Radha and Krishna. Krishna is served by Srimati Radharani. And we are in the position of His servants. So this means we are the dependent factor, dependent feature of the Lord. No one can live on their own without air, without food. The scientists don't produce food. Scientists can't even produce a blade of grass. One blade of grass, they don't know how to make it. They don't know how to make it. But we are depending on that, on nature, to give us. And nature is also feminine. Bhumi. She is Mother Nature, we call her. So the Lord's energy is feminine. The Lord is the one who's putting the seed into nature, and nature nurtures that seed. The seed of the soul is put in there by the Lord. The male impregnates the female, So the Lord is gives the soul its chance to grow and to develop itself. He is the source of that. But actually our nature is feminine, not masculine in the ultimate sense. And the highest servitors, the highest spiritual beings in the Goloka, Vrindavan, are the gopis and Radharani, not the males.
Very good.
It might be that the questioner was concerned more about the anatomical parts of our Constitution.
Madras view here is, it's not, there are two things. One is, as I said, the anatomical part, the jada, what we call. There is another one that is the soul. Soul is basically a non-matter. So when Shastra refers to male or female, it refers to the soul. It can also refer to the body. But when we are talking about the soul, Acharya Madhva says, the gender is actually for the soul, because the deha, the body, is jada, like any other panchabhuta item, table, chair. You don't talk about a man table and a woman table. You don't. So only the Chaitanya in Shastra, the gender is talked about the very soul. There are soul like male soul, female soul, and Madhva gives equal importance in the sense, it's not that a female soul is less than a male soul. It depends upon the intrinsic nature, yogita. Like for instance, we say that the Rudrani, she is much higher soul than Indra, Devendra. So it depends. That's one thing. And male soul, a female soul, I'm talking about the soul, not the anatomy, how it manifests. A female soul will always be a female soul. No change when it takes different deha. Whereas a male soul can take I'm talking about the male soul, it can take a female body due to some karma. So that's the position of Acharya Madhva.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Since you have the mic, Stafford, we'll go with this with you and then we'll go to Srimati Tarpatri on this. Do you believe it's okay to indulge in social networking sites like Facebook? Do you think it's okay, according to all the philosophies you have researched?
Yes, I don't see any reason to avoid Facebook. I did for a long time. I found myself too busy doing what I thought to be more important things. But my sons told me that I was being foolish. And in fact, I've just discovered that it does help to sell one's books through Facebook. So, I'm not sure that Facebook is good for the world. I'm not at all sure of that. I think, as a matter of fact, it adds just one more distraction to a long list of distractions that we need much less of. But since it's here, it's one of those things that I think one ought to use profitably and skillfully. So I'm not opposed to it in the individual instance. I think both of my sons use it and use it well. Frankly, I wish it didn't exist. But it does.
We'll give it to Srimati Tarpatri. Particularly, is it okay to do social networking, Facebook, according to our Shastras?
There is good and bad in everything. So, the thumb rule is, you see who does it? Who runs when you join a Facebook group or whatever, there are groups in Facebook. Who runs the Facebook group? You cannot just blindly go and join and see whatever you read. You don't have to take it as the Satya, because everybody says, Shastra says. You don't even know what Shastra says. So just do your research. Like any other field, you have to do your research even in Facebook and choose the right one. Question it. And always avoid the evil things, and we know what is good, bad, general sense. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful no matter where you are.
Okay. Since you have the mic, I will ask you one more question. and then we'll move to Dr. Puri. Why do prayers have a specific time?
Prayers, it's a very generic term. You think about santatam chintayanantam. You always think about God. But there are certain times, we say that there are some yogas and certain times, like for instance, there are times like Brahmi Muhurtam, early morning time. That time you get more grace of devatas and such. So it will be, instead of we praying, if we join at an appropriate time along with the devatas and other things, it will produce a better results. That's why it is preferred. It gets more merit. It will be more conducive for our sadhana. But doesn't mean that you cannot pray other times. You should pray. You should pray all the time.
Thank you. We'll give it to Dr. Puri. You would have heard, Dr. Puri, that we keep talking about the I, the life, the prana, and the atma. Are these three the same or different? The I, the prana, and the atma. Are these the same or different? And then the second part of that question is, what happens to that atma while you're sleeping? What happens to the atma while you're sleeping?
So, by Atma we mean the soul. And as I understand it, the soul means the thinking activity, the chit, we call it chit. Sat Chit Ananda, and soul is characterized with these three things. And chit is the prominent feature of the soul. He has cognitive ability, is the cognitive energy, chit, shakti of the Lord. Then pran, or breath, is that what you said? Pran, or life?
That's right,
Pran means, by life, by pran you mean life, and then the I, the ego. Well, actually life is a process, is an activity of both coming to be and ceasing to be, isn't it? We are born, come to be, and we also cease to be, die. So life is a temporary activity, belongs to the temporal world. And the I means the ahankara, the sense of self-consciousness. And as I explained in my talk, self-consciousness is coming also from the Atma as a product of the externalization of the thinking, pure thinking activity of the soul. So these are, there's a differentiation here, and it's actually I would say the way they develop logically one from the other. Yes, life comes before. If we develop from the lowest grade of consciousness, which means sense perception, every human beings and animals all have this quality of sense perception. They can experience the environment through their senses. This is the low form of consciousness. Then there's higher forms of consciousness called perception where you form an idea of a thing, a representation of your sense perceptions, and then understanding, looking into the nature of things, and then there's a sense of very difficult to explain, but anyhow, after understanding, if one understands infinity, one can understand what infinity means. He can develop consciousness. This is what consciousness depends on our ability to understand what infinity. Infinity means that there is nothing outside of itself. And consciousness has that kind of quality, of being aware of itself and what is other than itself. Be aware of other things is what we mean by consciousness, other than ourselves. Okay? So that consciousness, so life comes between sense perception and consciousness. And then consciousness, like I said, develops into self-consciousness. And that's where we get the I from. So there's a gradation between these different levels of Atma, I, life, etc. We'll have to look into the philosophical or logical development of those ideas to understand exactly how that happens and what they are.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of questions coming along. I have time only for one, so I'll have this one question answered by Stafford and Srimati Tadpatri. Just the fact that we are getting so many questions tells us we need to do this conference more and more often. So. Okay, so this one, Stafford will get this started with you. If souls are achieving moksha, we should actually see a decrease in the number of living beings. Instead, we see an explosion in population. Where are all these new characters coming from?
There are two ways to answer that. First of all, it may well be that the average soul is spending a lot less time in the interim world. Perhaps 300 years ago, the average soul spent 300 years in the interim. And now the average soul spends perhaps only 50 years in the interim. That would explain why there's so many more people on the planet. It may well be that souls find conditions here on the planet far more attractive today than was the case 300 years ago. And I suspect, I think there's a lot to that, as a matter of fact. The other possibility is that there are there are steady numbers of lower life forms that are graduating into humanhood. And that would explain it as well. So either one of those two. The other possibility is that God is the eternal creator and is simply delighting in the creation of as many souls as he pleases. So I don't find that a particularly difficult question to deal with.
Thank you.
Always we have to see the realm in which the question is asked. This realm is not in Pratyaksha. This realm is not in Anumana, that is logic. This belongs to Agama, about the souls. We don't even see the souls. So it belongs to Agama. So the answer should come only from Agama, from Vedas and Shastras. So the Shastra says the Jivas are Anadi. Jivas are infinite in number. And time is also infinite. But they say that infiniteness of Jivas is more than the infiniteness of time. So it doesn't run out. And I just like to clarify one other thing. People were talking about moksha. Even that concept has to come from Agama only, not from direct perception or logic. The moksha is defined in Bhagavata as muktir nitva anyata rupam swarupena vyavastita. Moksha is experiencing your own intrinsic nature. So by that definition, there is moksha for everybody. What type of moksha is what distinguishes? So, like we say Gita means Bhagavad Gita, when we say moksha means only the Vaikuntha. So that's one clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's give them a big hand. The first one goes to M.G. Prasad. Oh, sorry, I forgot the one. The question is, do I need a guru? If so, how do I find one?
Everyone needs a guru. Because guru, as is referred, Gukarastu antakaraha, Rukarastu tannivarakaha. Even for a child to stand up, it needs a support. of course, mother and father, or even sometimes even inanimate objects also, like chair and all that. So even to just stand up itself, we need a alambana, a support. Now we are talking of life itself, coming through the mental instruments and all that. So Guru is essential. Now to find a Guru, some sadhana has to be done by the seeker. Because even to recognize who has more knowledge, one needs some knowledge. Otherwise, one cannot find. So that knowledge has to be gotten first from the environment, from the parents, from the growing environment, from the authentic books, Bhagavad Gita, things of authentically written. Then from that one gets a frame of mind. Then when one is searching in that, then the Guru will appear. Guru will appear in the sense one will recognize the Guru. So it needs these things. Just simply going and I'm frustrated in life, I'm disappointed in life, things are not working, and suddenly falling at somebody who can give moksha in 10 minutes thing or weekend crash course. It only crashes the life of the person, but it won't happen.
Thank you. Thank you. This one is, we'll start off with Stafford and then it will go to Keshwara Tadipatri. If we accept there is God, are we accepting this one God or a family of gods?
It really depends on whether or not you're a Christian or a Muslim on the one hand, or a Hindu on the other. You know how the Muslim and the Christian would answer that question. It gets more complicated when you step into the Hindu world. I myself find that monotheism, or even monism, but monotheism is a better word, and polytheism go well together. I have no problem with the idea that there are many powerful spiritual forces that can help us or do us in, who can be considered and are called gods. Now these spiritual beings would be called something else in other religions. They might be called angels or archangels, but it seems to me that the gods of Hinduism are simply very powerful spirits, very evolved spirits with considerable power, and I have no problem asking them, reaching out to them for help, while at the same time, in another mood, asking the God within me to deepen my experience of Him and to help me. So I find them all utilizable and consistent with each other. There is, of course, ultimately only one supreme power, but there are many lesser powers under Him that are what we would call spiritual beings. That's my answer.
Thank you.
The question is, do we need only one God or a panel of gods? The one that tells us about gods also gives the answer. Acharya Mata says, Svatantro Bhagavan Vishnu. So if we have a panel of gods and each one is, say, okay, all are powerful, okay, but then only one can be independent, and then, okay, Acharya said Vishnu is Svatantro Bhagavan Vishnu, or Saivites make it Svatantro Bhagavan Shiva, why not? So how do we go about it? The answer is very simple. Forget about who told what. Whoever gave the information about gods gives also the answer. Sarve Veda Yat Padam Amananti. So the Vedas are the basis for Hinduism. If that is the case, Vedas, they also tell us which God is the Supreme God. So the beauty of it is only Vishnu has all the other names consumed in him. That means if you say Rudra, Rudro, Bhahushara, Babru, Vishwini, Shravaha, so Rudra also is the name for Vishnu. So that's Sarva Shabda Vachyatva, that is addressable by every single word. Not only every single word, probably every single sound. There's only one Supreme God. And, oh, you are a Vaishnava, so you're saying Vishnu. So look at the word Vishnu. Vishnu means Vyapana Srila. So it actually is not actually describing, just referring some, like a John, Jacob, Peter, like that. It's not like, actually the Hindu, like Stafford was saying, the answer is simple for Christians and Muslims, but it's get complicated for Hindus. But I would say it's simplest for Hindus. Actually, it doesn't get complicated because every word of the Lord actually doesn't just refer to the Lord as an abstract entity, but it actually describes the Lord. Just Vishnu is Vyapana Shila, Narayana is Na-ara-ayana, or Narayana, Sarvaguna Sampurnaha, Sarvadosha Vijita, one who has all the auspicious qualities and absolutely no flaws. So that's what describes the Lord. So actually, answer is pretty simple. One who is all independent, one who has no defects, one who has all the auspicious qualities. There's only one Lord, and that's one independent Lord, and that's the one who is supreme. So all the other gods are just parivara devatas. Parivarataya grahya abhiheya pradhanataha. So they all have to be worshipped. Not that we should just ignore all the other gods, but they are also devotees of Vishnu. Tat bhakti taratamyena taratamya vimuktigam. So there is gradation. Swamiji was mentioning this morning. It's indisputable fact that there is gradation, and the gods are there. They have gradation among them, just as we have gradation. And how do we know that it is correct? Whoever gives us the information, that is the scriptures themselves describe what it is. So we don't have to guess. We don't have to just kind of go on a wild discussion, but it's actually described beyond any doubts. But one has to have the clear concept of it. Now, there's a question about Guru. How do we find a Guru? Asamshayana, samshaya chetrunam. The real litmus test for a Guru is one who has no doubts and one who can clear the doubts of others without any trace of doubt. That is what is actually needed, and that will actually give you the exact answer what you're looking for, but just you have to search for it and get it from the right place.
Thank you. Jai Krishna, this one's for you. How can we motivate our kids into samskara? This seems to be a challenge.
I assume we are talking about religious samskara. Because samskara means the memory that gets created with impressions on the mind. This is also one of those. Because as you practice a certain religion, it becomes habit. And once it becomes a habit, it never goes away. Because as the word very habit, my physics professor used to tell us this. Habit, you strike off H, A bit will remain. If you strike off A, bit will remain. If you take off B, it will remain. So habit is a very powerful thing. And so what we need to do for kids is make a daily ritual kind of thing. That's how we all started. When we started kindergarten, our teacher gave us a copybook. A is shaped like this. Write it 10 times. We wrote it. We made our handwritings neat as a result. We didn't ask questions. Why should I write A like this? Did you ask? No, you didn't. What if I had asked that question? A good teacher would tell us, well, my friend or child, you need to grow up. Study linguistics, how the English language evolved, find out about alphabets, how they got to this shape. Please remember that English language was not like this always. 700 years ago, A was different. Somehow it has become like it is today, and so on. So all that knowledge will come to you, but much later. For that, you need to write the copywriting 10 times. That is how you train your kids. Just do it. It will come to you.
Yeah, I did ask that question when I was a kid. I was told I was too inquisitive, so. Probably that's why I get to ask you now questions. Okay, this is Tenji Prasad. What is the difference between religion and spirituality?
Of course, both words are English, so that's in true understanding, they are one and the same. Because if you go to the etymological aspect of the word religion, religion means religio, to go back to the source. That is the meaning of religion. Not so. If somebody saying religion is only rituals for what? So that question has to be asked. So to going back to the source is the where the word religion came about. Spirituality, of course, through the understanding of the spirit, and the spirit, what is in me, and the spirit of the source. So that's basically both are one and the same. But if people are making difference between the two, as the way we understand, that is incorrect. So now what is being understood, at least in my interaction with people, spirituality means you are going higher and deeper and all that. Religion means you are still, in the outside the house or something like that. So to me that difference should not exist. And religious means sincere, discipline. We all know that. Do religiously means do with discipline. Without discipline, nothing can be done, nothing can be achieved. And spirituality also, without discipline, nothing can be achieved. So they're one and the same.
Does this mean then people from two different religions are spiritually oriented differently?
Correct.
They can't be the same.
No, I mean, in terms of the spirituality, they are going deeper into spirituality through the religious means in their path. See, for example, the position of Hindu Dharma is a Hindu should become a better Hindu through the Hindu rituals at the time, as Nilmangala said, grow up in that sense. Then in Christianity, one should become better Christian through the Christian rituals. And same thing for Buddhist, or same thing for Islam. So the whole conversion and all that becomes, comparison becomes very, so one has to become better understanding of oneself. So we need some rituals. And what rituals are better for the person who is born in that? Who is born in that and gone with parents to that place of worship.
Thank you. Stafford, this is for you. Can you explain what is free will?
What is freedom?
Free will. Free will.
Oh, free will. Yes. It's the most immediate thing that we know we have. It's the sense that we could have chosen other than we did. It's the sense that we chose poorly or chose well, and that we were free to do either one. It's an immediate experience that we have. If you try to ground it, if you try to think of something that we do without being influenced by something else, well, we can do that too. But we have to be clear about whether or not we're being determined by something, in which case would rule out free will, or just motivated by something, which of course makes room for free will. I think that when I choose freely, I am motivated to choose one way or the other. I am not determined to do that. But there must be some motivation there, or we would be just choosing randomly. We wouldn't really be choosing. So free will is something that is immediate, undeniable, and is rendered meaningful in a context of motivation. Thank you.
Thanks. An extension to that question is, how do Acharya, not not for you, Stafford, but for any one of the others. How do Acharya Matva and Acharya Ramanuja view at free will?
Actually, free will, the question is free will, how do we define? Free will is like, the word says the complete independence in making a decision. So when we say, do we have a free will? The question is, what are we talking about? So free will for us, we don't have a free will. Even suppose you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Two aspects. And if you believe in the all supremacy of God, that means a God who is all-knowing, then automatically we have to concede that we don't have free will. Because if God knows everything, He also knows that what we are going to make a decision on. So that means our decision is already known to Him even before we make a decision. That means we don't really have a free will if we believe in all-knowing God. So free will is something that we always think that we have, but we never have. That's what is free will. And only if we believe in God, He has only the free will and we don't have free will. And even if someone does not believe in God, suppose let us take a rationalist who does not believe in God, and such a person, how his thinking process can go on. For every decision that we make, there is something about what we call cause and chain effect. So something is happening now, it has a cause behind it. And that one is an effect of a cause prior to that. And if we go like that chain, there is a chain that goes beyond our control. That means in this cause and effect chain, we are not the ones who is making decision now because it depends on some prior event. That means even going on a rationalist belief without believing in God, logically we'll have to conclude that we don't have a free will because we are not actually the architects of today's situation based on the infinite cause and effect chain. So this is something that we have to think about. So the free will is something that's delusive, we don't have, and we may get the apparent feeling that we have because I say I am lifting my hand. I have a free will that I can lift my hand whenever I want. But just imagine that if I didn't have a hand, I wouldn't have lifted my hand. So I did not make a decision that I should have a hand. Somebody else gave me the hand, somebody else created me. So I am not a creator of my own hand. So it may appear that I have the free will, and even when I lift my hand, there are so many things, the brain giving the signals, so many chemical reactions taking place, and I am not the architect of all of those. So if we think deep down, we realize that we really don't have free will in an absolute sense at all.
Thank you. So I was hoping Prasad could add to that, but we'll go for a different question though, where you can answer this.
Yeah, I can answer.
Okay. Or do you want, feel free to, yeah, go ahead.
Just to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
As very rightly said by C.K. Tadipatri, in Ramanuja's Siddhanta also, free will and fate, they are interconnected. So, because the very birth itself is not a choice of freedom, because especially when one experiences suffering and difficulties, of course when one is happy and joyful and born to be free, born and all that, but when the same person is undergoing through suffering and pain and all that, then if you ask, are you happy that you were born? He said no. So the question is, birth itself is a question of loss of freedom in one way. But in humans, there is an element of free will based on the birth to increase that ability of free will. To give an example, a cow tied by a rope to a pole. Now the length of the rope is the fate. And the freedom to move within that rope length is the freedom. So now, the question is, if the cow behaves well, listens to the master properly, then what is, this cow is behaving well, let me increase the length of the rope. So in the next round, he will increase the length of the rope.
Very well, sir. Thank you. This question is specifically for Keshava Thadapatri and M.G. Prasad. There's a lot of confusion about Swadharma. What is Swadharma? How to know our Swadharma?
Swadharma, when he says Swadharmi Nidhanam Shreya, so Swadharma is Swavarna Ashrama Uchita Dharma, that is Swadharma. That means for every person, he is in a particular situation, like Varna, Ashrama, whatever. So actually, based on the situation, a person knows what is the right thing for him to do, based on the context. So basically, the context defines us what the Swadharma is. For example, a person like, a judge is there, and he is sitting in his judge's seat, and he wants to give a decision. So it's the duty of the judge to give a decision that's appropriate in the court at that situation. And somebody who doesn't have the right as a judge wants to give a decision, no, he doesn't have the right. So basically, you should have the adhikara for that, and you should have the eligibility for doing that, and based on the context and the situation, the thing that is prescribed to you, that is what is Swadharma. So Swa is not, Swa, the word prefix Swa means a lot of things. Like in Sanskrita, it can mean Swatantra, but in Swadharma, it is not Swatantra, but it's Swadharma. Here Swa means for your Swabhava, for whatever is appropriate for that context, for that situation, that is what is Swadharma for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, Swadharma is, the Swa is very nicely described. Because, of course, the first thing is when somebody is born as a human being, so there is a dharma associated with that, as we referred earlier. Then one is born into a family, then one is born into a certain tradition. So all of these have to be integrated, because if any conflict occurs in any of these, then the person is going to be unhappy. So whatever it brings unhappiness, that means there is Swadharma is not being followed. For example, if someone is really like, say teaching profession, just as an example, when the person says, no, more money is available in something else, and the person goes into that. When you meet that person after a while, that person will be unhappy. Lot of money, but the person is unhappy. So in that context, they say the person did not operate, did not follow Swadharma. Because this, whatever the complaint or thing unhappiness is going through would not have been there. And the unhappiness has sustained a long time because the Swadharma was not followed in that context. But in an even inner context also, the Devata Upasana and all of these are important because Swadharma refers to all of that. Because the birth instincts are also have to be recognized by the individual and then follow that dharma accordingly.
Thank you. This one is for Jai Krishna. I'll continue on that discussion about dharma. So the other day what happened, Jai Krishna, is there was a cockroach that was in my house. And my wife's very scared of cockroaches. So as soon as I saw the cockroach, I started to take a stick and basically just kill it. Am I doing my dharma now in protecting my wife from cockroaches?
Depends on who you talk to. My wife kills all little things that come into the house. I asked her why, let them live. She says, do I go and live in their house? So, depends on who you talk to. That's why there is what is called sakshi. If a frog is being eaten by a snake, do you kill the snake and save the frog? Or do you let snake have its dinner? What is dharma here? What is the right thing to do? Half the people in this room probably will choose one and the other half will choose the other. If you don't feed the snake, if you take away the frog from the snake, then who will feed the snake now? It found its prey, you didn't feed it, right? It's doing its job. Therefore, in all such cases of what is right in this situation, to kill a cockroach or not, in your case, all such things, your Sakshi will tell you what is right for you. It is just you, because your Sakshi is just you, it's not somebody else's Sakshi. So that will tell you. As you listen to your Sakshi, doing the right things, right? In the case of Dharma, the first time you want to do a Dharma, like stealing or lying and things like that, which you shouldn't be doing, there is somebody, that conscience, Sakshi, Antasakshi, it will tell you, what, hey, don't do it. But if you listen to it at that time and stay away, that light called Sakshi, and remember the Jnana Jyoti, it burns brighter. You're strengthening it. Look at someone like Mahatma Gandhi. His Sakshi was so big, burning like a bright light, that he took on a British Empire. Just like that. Just one man, he could do it. Because of the Sakshi. Did I answer your question?
I think you did.
Your problem is killing cockroaches much smaller compared to what Gandhiji had to do.
I was about to say, trust me, if I don't move the cockroach out. Thank you. Thank God. He's a man of experience. He speaks through Okay.
But there is an alternate solution for it also. I mean, in terms of cockroach business. You can carefully...
My wife is aware, that's why I'm sharing this.
I know. You can carefully use a broomstick and slowly need some tactics and some compassion on the cockroach. And then take it and leave it outside where it will not go to another's house.
By the way, if I was alone, that's exactly what I do. I just pick it up, drop it outside. Okay. This one is probably, any one of you can pick up, or all of you can pick this up. This is probably the last question. Question specifically came to Prasad, but I would encourage everyone to pick this up. Can you say that karma is also a dharma? Can you say karma is also a dharma?
Dharma. Yes. Because dharma is the underlying current in the artha and kama and moksha also. Because dharma, as we said earlier, it is the right action, right behavior, proper understanding of duty, all of that. Dharma is almost impossible to translate into other language. We can describe it in elaborate, understandable way. So, karma is a part of life, desire. So, for example, when we have the ashrama dharma, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha and sannyasa, they each has a karma associated with that. Brahmachari should have a desire for knowledge. So that is a dharma of that. So Krishna himself said, dharma aviruddha kamosmi bharatarshava. So in fact, it's one of the names for Krishna is Kamajanakaya Namaha. So he is that. And Bhagavad Virodhe Kama, of course, is another.
Thank you.
The word dharma is a very loaded word, as a saying. We use it in multiple senses, whereas other words also use in multiple senses, but especially dharma, somebody says, it is the dharma of the fire to burn. There dharma is used as property. Dharma, it is his dharma, so dharma is used as property. Then we say, it is my dharma to protect the good people. There dharma is just a duty. So the word dharma is dharana dharma. So dharma rakshanartham, the Lord incarnates to protect dharma in the world. So it's a universal dharma we're talking about. So the word dharma is just in various senses, and depending on the context, we have to know what sense the word dharma is used. So same way kama, like when he says kama, it's just in a sense of just a passion. Sometimes, kama is in a good sense, a good kama, sat kama, and sometimes it's dushta kama, it's used in a bad. So the context we have to see to know in what sense it is used. So when the question is asked, is dharma also a kama? Well, if you're talking about the property sense, then kama and dharma can become like only the same thing. But if it is used in a different sense, like a duty for dharma, and kama is a passion, then it's not really the same, they're different. So we have to know the context, and then we can say whether they mean same thing or not. So if we ask a question, are they same? In what sense are we using dharma? In what sense are we using kama? So context will have to describe us what exactly is being referred.
Thank you. Jai Krishna, you want to add anything to that? Even Stafford, you want to add? Go ahead.
My wife is 11 years younger than I am. She's still a gopi. I'm pretty well used up. I have to make an effort, and I do, and I think it's part of my duty to do that. That's, in other words, I work at passion, and passion has its place. It has its necessity. So yes, it depends on the situation.
Very good. We'll now have, it's my pleasure again for the second time to have Sri Jnaana Samgama come over onto the stage. He's actually going to kick off a panel discussion on science and religion. So we'll have the four speakers be seated. We will join you in the middle. And after that, after the panel discussion, Swamiji will give his remarks, and then we will have a conclusion session on that. Following which, Sri Bananja Govindacharya is also here, but he's going to speak after the conclusion in Kannada. So he's going to speak in Kannada.
पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं भारती करुणापात्रं भारती पदभूषणं भारती पदमारूढ़ं भारती तीर्थमाश्रय सद्गुरु चरणारविन्दाभ्यो नमः. I know this will be one of the most sought after sessions during the proceedings of this particular conference, because we always want to know why that children ask us all the time. We never ask our parents any time. And because there is this disconnect, we are at a loss. And when if at all we happen to ask our parents, they used to simply shut us up. Never had any opportunity to know. And did we at all take any effort to know ourselves? Didn't do either. There is a Chinese proverb which says, be a fool once, then a fool forever. If you have a doubt, ask that question. Even if others think it is stupid, doesn't matter, ask. Once it is clarified, at least you won't be a fool forever. Now, when we talk about this religion, I will just only make my remarks very brief so that we have got experts in on several other facets who can pitch in and the audience can pitch in. When we talk about religion, we talk about our religion, Sanatana Dharma. As known as Hinduism, the way it has been given the name by others. Religion is faith-based. There are two aspects to your religion. One is based on the faith, which is primarily driven by emotion. Bhakti is emotion. Sentiment is emotion. It is one aspect of that. The other aspect of that in our culture is the philosophy part, where you try to explain a few things, inquire about a few things, finally lead to understand who you are, who I am. What is this creation about? Is it a creation at all? These are all questions which come in the Jnana Kanda portion of our Dharma. The Karma Kanda portion has a lot of ritual, bhakti, so many other things based. If you really try to rationalize, consciousness is ever a mystery for science. I don't know whether they will ever converge. Yesterday, I don't know, the other professor from Mississippi, he made a remark that there is a computer, which is the 5th largest computer in the world, who are trying to unravel the mysteries of brain. What reactions happen there? What are the ionic species that are responsible for doing this, that and all? It will go on forever. Neuroscience is a mystery. Conscious will ever be a mystery, consciousness. These are all other parts. And in our system, when we talk about creation, we don't have a time zero. Darwinian has a time zero. We don't have. We only call transformation. There is nothing like creation. Whatever existed in potent form took shape, manifested. So, Vyaktam, Avyaktam, manifest, unmanifest. This has been going on forever. So, it is cyclic. So, the thinking from linear has already gone to cyclic. And in cyclic thinking, you don't have time zero anywhere. So, these are all mysteries. So, we call those things which are not explainable by our perceptive instruments of cognition. Many of them are apaurushaya vishayas. For example, rebirth. We don't know what happens after rebirth. Is another question. Punya papas. Drishtaparam we know, adrishtaparam we don't know. When we do, for example, when you give a few dollars to a beggar, it quenches his hunger immediately. There is a drishtaparam. You see an effect happening on him, a peace in his mind, he gets his need fulfilled for that time being. But behind that, there is an adrishtapalam which gives you punyam. And punyam papa are all again things which are not cognizable by our instruments of perception. So that is where our religion, our faith, they have one big resource to try to unravel that adrishtam portion and that other reason which cannot be explained through other means. Shruti, Vedas are the resource, and again faith comes. You have to have faith in Vedas. And once you have faith in Vedas, then you say it is Shruti Vakyam, Shruti has said this, so I believe. So fundamentally faith or belief is the thing driving, whether it is that portion, an emotional portion, sentiment, bhakti portion, or the other portion which is essentially things which are not explained, apaurushaya vishayas, paurushaya and apaurushaya. So this is how it is. There is always a quest. Children always ask these questions everywhere. This always is. We want to understand everything, and we want to think that everything has to be logical. We don't have to think everything. It can be logical. It need not be things which has to be seen. For example, I know I exist. I know my father existed. I know my grandfather existed. Great-grandfather existed because I exist. I have never seen any of them at all. I don't have to have a pramanam to see immediately those people are there that I have seen to know that I exist today. So they are all inferences based on a logic because I am there. So even though you don't see them, their existence is never questioned. So when it comes to analysis, when it comes to logic, nyaya, logic and mimamsa portions, tarka, always they argue. So with respect to our religion, we have nothing like, in Vedanta there is nothing like a probability, nothing like a chance at all in Vedanta, whereas science is mostly driven by some of those considerations. What birth I have taken today, there is no chance. It is all driven by your karma, that's what we believe our scriptures say. So there is nothing like a probability in our Vedanta, in our system of beliefs, whereas science has those concepts. So everything, where they may go to all kinds of Big Bang theory, all those things they can go to whatever extent one can go. One has to perhaps, based on our faith, has to comprehend the fact that there is a limit only to which you can completely explain everything in nature. Because there are certain things which, even some ordinary things we know, for example, time domains. Time domains, if you say, for example, when I'm awake, I have a time domain, but when I sleep and have a dream, I have a different dream time domain. Within those 1 minute or 2 minutes of dream, I got married, we have given birth to children, I raised them, put them in college, put all those things in 1 minute in the dream plane. So when we say Devas have a different time frame, the Brahmaji had a different time frame, all these 2000 Chaturyugas making 124 day of Brahma, and like that he lives for 100 years, they are all inferable, even from this simple extrapolation of our time when we are awake and the time when we are having a dream. So these things all could be comprehended to a significant extent, but where it will completely lead to a total resolution of everything that we see in nature could be explained by science? Question mark. We don't know. But the quest has to continue. That is how human mind evolves, human brain as its intellect evolves. So this is what happens. So this is always a quest. So for everything, we try to find an answer using science, using our methods of sense perception may not be possible. All the times may be difficult, may not be possible. There is nothing wrong in trying to tell. I cannot explain it. I cannot try to understand it through the medium of cognition that is available to me. There is nothing wrong in saying that. We do not have to find every reason for every belief or everything that we have in our system of faith. But both could complement each other in a very, very different plane, because when we understand certain things, for example, our Vedic mathematics is a mathematical thing. There's nothing that there are so many things that has evolved in this particular field. It's mathematics things. And the way astronomy works, there are so many other aspects which you can reason out. So, for example, the effects of planets on us and all you cannot reason out. That's what scripture says, that's what perhaps they have. There it comes, okay, for so many people who are all born in this thing, there is a probability there. For those people it worked, and because of that it worked for this case also. That's the probability there. But for Apurusha Vishaya, certain things like that, there may not be a cognitive method. So within this, we have got lot of steps to do, what to explain, what not to explain, what can be attempted to be explained, what cannot be attempted at all to be explained. This is something we have to always keep our eyes open and ears open to gather knowledge from so many people, from so many facets of life. There is knowledge alone will be able to unravel many of these things. Being a great scientist is good. For example, Charvakas were only material people. They, for the matter alone existed. There is nothing like a consciousness for them. That's the Charvakas. And they thought that everything is through matter. Consciousness has become a property of matter. That is what they thought. Whereas for the Vedantin, consciousness is ultimate. For him, without consciousness is nothing. That is all Brahman is. The Brahman Maya coupled, that's what Vedanta talk about, the Srishti and all. But consciousness is ultimate for the Vedantin, Charvakas, material matter is the ultimate for them. So, which is karma, all those things, they're all a thin line in terms of comprehending each one of them. So, given this, given the preamble of how we are trained to think and how we want to go forward in thinking, how we want to deal with our children in enabling them to reason out some of those things, it's a big challenge. It is going to be a big challenge, not for today, tomorrow, almost forever. Because that is how our faith has been, and whenever anything is faith-driven, you always have got that unknown. And that unknown is difficult to comprehend. So now given this preamble, now I want to open up for the audience to think. And then, because whatever they have in terms of They are queries. What they either want to ask or they were afraid to ask, or what they had reservations to ask. The experts are sitting here, so I don't want to be talking anymore. I want to open it up to the audience to hear from you, so that whenever you ask anything and give some opinion or something, the experts here would be able to either compliment that or will be able to throw more light on that and then make it much more clearer for everybody to understand. So I want this to be a totally participative discussion than just because science and religion is always a question for us. So I want to be more participative, and I want to make sure that all of us, other panelists and even people in the audience who are all experts in various other forms will be able to do that. So will you be able to please comment?
We'll coordinate with a couple of minds.
Sure, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, now you get freedom from writing on cards. You can ask you'll raise your hand if you have a question, and the topic, please refrain it to science and religion. Okay?
Let me start off with a comment. I think the basis of everything is philosophy. Philosophy means love of knowledge. And this was done by pure reasoning. Now, when you apply reasoning to matter, it becomes science. When you apply it to non-matter, it becomes either theology, or there is a third thing which is neither science nor is it theology, and this is where probably a discussion of consciousness comes in. Consciousness does not necessarily imply religion. Does anybody want to comment on it?
Combining those two things, religion has multiple segments, like you're saying, religion can be just religious practices or religious philosophical thinking. So the religion has different realms. So when we want to connect a science which is available only to the direct perception, pratyaksha pramana, and the religion which has multiple segments that has pratyaksha, anumana, which is actually follows either pratyaksha or agama, and agama pramana. So all these are present in religion. So when we try to map science and religion, what we are doing is actually is not a perfect fit map. Just as Charvakas are trying to bring everything under the umbrella of science, the same way if anybody tries to bring everything, even the science, under the umbrella of religion, it becomes a wasted effort. It cannot be done. So coming to the question, so reasoning, when we apply the reasoning like to matter, it becomes science. When we apply the reasoning to a non-matter, then it becomes consciousness or atma, whatever, so it becomes religion. So the reasoning, when we apply to non-matter, atma, it actually stops short because we cannot do it completely. We have to rely on what's called agama pramana at some point or stage. We cannot apply only reasoning for non-matter. Okay, atma, logically I try to do this, I try to do this. No, you will stop short at some point because you cannot go beyond that point. You may use a little bit of reasoning, that's it. Then we have to rely on shabda pramana or agama pramana. So this is where the faith takes a seat, like the faith comes and plays its role. So once the faith starts playing its role, the logic actually takes a backseat. So either you apply the logic, aranu-pramana, or shabda pramana, or pratyaksha pramana, only to some extent can be applied for religion or consciousness or atma or anything that's religion-based things.
Actually, I was trying to create a third category. That was my question. Yeah. Whether the study of consciousness can be separated from theology. Because the content of consciousness can be studied, but the consciousness itself is not.
In fact, that is.
The subject-object thing is what allows for science, when the subject to subject, science cannot work it. So the consciousness comes into that category, but you don't necessarily have to work it through God and theology.
Definitely, that's what is called Nirishwara Matas. That's where actually they play. There are Nirishwara Matas which are trying to do that. So there, they don't believe in any God. They say, we don't need God. They are called Nirishwara Matas. Like, for example, what are the Nirishwara Matas there? I don't have to go into the details. But yes, there are Nirishwara religions which concentrate on only the philosophical aspects without going into the God. They say, we don't even believe in any God. Even if gods are there, you bring in gods, they're like ours, a little bit elevated beings, that's it. Nothing more than that. So they completely take out the theological part of it and concentrate only on the philosophical aspects. There are such religions that are there. So then that again becomes a question of faith again.
All right.
So I have one question regarding the science. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Now, yesterday you all heard that there's a fifth largest computer which is trying to model our subconscious mind, or trying to really get some physical form of thing to see how we're all thinking about. So when I take this back, let's say about this is as of today. We're trying to say that they're trying to model, which we don't know whether it is successful or not. That's like a question right now. But then let's take this time, let's back to about 100 years or 200 years back, when mankind was still trying to visualize like how it is on the universe. People were even talking about moon and Mars and other things. At that time, nobody had even a concept of saying we were able to reach physically to that place now. But when we come back forward, we see that we're still able to make that achievement here. So, does it say that, like, from 100 years from now, do you think that is still not a reality of trying to model the consciousness that we're trying to do right now today?
Whoa. Hold on. I will answer your question eventually, but there is something else that is kind of missing here. So let's put it on to you first. I will draw the big picture of what goes on, wherein scientific thinking is one of them. Okay? First of all, who is inquiring here? Us, isn't it? People. We are sitting here trying to find out, why am I here? Who am I? Why did I come here? Why is the world like this? Is there a God? Why is he partial to some? Why did he make me like this? Why am I not Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why do I have this body? And so on. So we all get this question. Good. First, the very first stage of inquiry into what you want to know is called faith. That's where it all begins. As our friend said, that's part of your religion also. Faith means you just do what you have been asked to do. Don't ask questions, isn't it? You know, you have heard it many times. In religious circles, questions are not entertained. They are not encouraged at all. Whereas, in what we are going to say, as we call it philosophy, philosophy is Vedanta, by the way. Vedanta means what? The final meaning that comes out of a study of Veda. That is Veda plus Anta, Vedanta. This Vedanta was given by Vyasa. Uttarmimamsa has the other name called Vedanta. Is it not so? In the form of Brahma Sutra. That is exactly what Vedanta is. Now, the one who is in the first mountain of faith, someone says there are only 3 pramanas. If you study Vedanta in Udupi today, they will teach you there are only 3 pramanas. If you study Vedanta in Sringeri, they will say there are 6 pramanas. What happened to the other 3? Somebody has to inquire, is it not? Thus, he only moves to the second stage of inquiry. All knowledge, so to say, Vedanta, is for that guy who was able to inquire. Got it? So he goes to, let's call the stage of reason. This stage of reason, the second stage, has what is called scientific reasoning. That's where all the science we are talking. Actually, philosophy or Brahma Vidya, what we call, is the science of Brahman. Why do you think it is not science? When people separate philosophy and science, I don't understand at all. This is the science of Brahman, Brahma Vidya, Sarva Vidya, Pratishthana. So whatever Vidya you are talking about is already included in Brahma Vidya. Why do you forget that? It is the source of that too. After all, Mula Vak, Mula Vidya, Mula Shabda, where is it coming from? It is Veda. So Brahma Vidya is the origin for every branch of knowledge that there is. Got it? Therefore, it is science of Brahman. Therefore, let's not use terms loosely here. Because we are talking Vedanta, seriously. So in the second phase of inquiry, there is this 2A, you can call 2A and 2B. The 2A is the scientific reason, wherein you go with Pratyaksha and Anumana. Study the external world. A geologist, he knows so many types of stones. Why a diamond got formed in the earth? A Vedantin may not even care about diamonds. If you give a diamond to sannyasi, it's like, Sri Swami, what will you do? Isn't it? He is not interested in any of that. That's why our rishis, although they could have done all this, they were sattvikas. Sattvikas do not create anything. It is only rajasikas that create. If I am hot, how do I make myself comfortable? Is a Rajasika Buddhi there. He creates what is called air conditioner for himself. He designs a machine. He designs a fan. A Sattvika would sit there in Udupi hot sun. Because that's where God put him there. He doesn't care. That is Sattvika. Sattvika never create anything, so they are not very useful to us in that sense. When it comes to material things, similarly people who are in moksha, they are not very useful to us because they don't come back and write anything, teach anything to anybody. Isn't it? They're up there, they made it. But that's it. As far as we are concerned, they're useless. Just note that. Anyway, coming back to this. So in the second phase, you have the scientific reasoning. But science, it doesn't care about Veda. Isn't it? None of the scientists agreed because Veda says something. Grass is green, not because Veda said it, but because Pratyaksha is saying it. That's how scientists look at it. But when it comes to their own Atman, after all, who is the scientist? He is another Sakshi, he is another Jiva, he is another Pratantra like anybody else is, isn't it? He is no different, he may not care about any of this, but he still has a mind, he still has the effects of his own discoveries on himself. Isn't it? The guy who designed the atom bomb, and then finally he saw Hiroshima and Nagasaki happen. Do you know what happened to him? He went crazy after that. Because his own creation affects his own mind. After all, there is a mind for him too. And therefore he is as human as the philosophical inquirer ever was. Nothing different there. After all, God didn't create. Okay, you are philosophers, you are free from all this. You are scientists, you can do whatever. No, it was not. They were equal paratantras. All ajnanis. To put it in Mahabharata terms, Bhimasena was a jnani. Duryodhana was an ajnani. Both were equal paratantras though. That's what we need to understand. Therefore, whether you know it or not, whether a scientist agrees to it or not, he's still a paratantra. There is no doubt about it. He may not care about it, that's a different story. Just as Duryodhana, he never cared about it. Sri Krishna, he was right there. But he wouldn't recognize him as Sri Krishna. He only recognized him as a regular human being. Even Arjuna did, isn't it, to some extent, till Vishwarupa. So, Hey Krishna, Hey Yadava, Hey Saketi, he feels bad for himself. Oh my God, I called you all this, I treated you like my friend. Here you are, something else. Where was this form all these days? He's taken aback in Vishwarupa. Anyway, coming back to why I'm saying all this, because in this scientific reasoning, you look at the external world knowing that you are the one who is doing it. Isn't it? Even scientists know that. You put somebody else's name on his paper, do you think he will keep quiet? No, he wants his paper, isn't it? After all, therefore he wants his self-identity, his name and fame, his whatever jnana, to be stamped with his identity right there. And therefore he wants it. But who are you? Ask him, he doesn't care. Because he has to come to Vedanta. That's why you have in 2B what is called Jnaana Samgama. That's called Darshana. Darshana means various schools of thought, starting from Charvaka, who is like the material scientist, like our Jnana, and then you have Buddha, Gautama Buddha, Jaina of Mahavira, and then Sankhya of Kapila, Yoga of Patanjali, and then Jnana of Gautama, Vaisheshika of Kanada. All these are rishis, great thinkers. And then Purva Mimamsa of Jaina, and then Uttara Mimamsa of Badarayana. So these are, finally this is this Uttara Mimamsa that gets to be called Vedanta. Making an attempt to interpret Veda Vyasa, we got 3 schools. First 7th century Shankara, and then 12th century Acharya Ramanuja, 13th century Srimadhava. So Vedanta originator is still Veda Vyasa, don't forget that. Therefore, whoever is, if you want to teach Vedanta, you better go to Veda Vyasa. If you are going to create your own, like this morning we heard, many theories about the universe, the being, the non-being, the nothing and all. Where was Veda in all this? They all started out thinking your own, but none of them called Vedanta. So they were sincere to that extent. Isn't it? We are only worried about those people who call themselves Vedanta and don't follow Veda Vyasa. That's where we have an issue. If you don't want to follow Veda Vyasa, don't call it Vedanta. Call it yourself. Aristotle, great thinker. He never called it Vedanta. We respect him for that. But if you want to call something Vedanta, you better follow Veda Vyasa. So there are these 3 acharyas who made an attempt to interpret Veda Vyasa. Veda Vyasa gave us the 4 divisions of Veda. He recompartmentalized the order he divided Veda. He recompartmentalized them because during his time, Jnana Apulibhuta, as we said, it was all in a very convoluted state. It was like a library that was wrecked by a hurricane or something. All papers all over the place. So you needed somebody who knew it all. Pick up a paper and look at it, he can say, this is the 7th chapter of Hamlet by Shakespeare, I know this. You can recompartmentalize that. That's how Veda Vyasa rebuilt the 4 Vedas and gave it to us. Rigveda, Sama, and Atharva, as you know today. And in order to fix the meaning of such a Veda, he wrote what are called Brahma Sutras. That is Vedanta. Okay? Now, let's come back to this inquiry. He has looked at all the faith and started asking questions. He came to the science thing. And science, as we said, this consciousness question, he knows he's there. He wants to know about himself. But science doesn't seem to care about it. It will tell you all about your body. But about your conscience, no answers. Why am I like this? No answers. Where am I going? There are no answers. The doctor himself doesn't know what's happening to him. They don't answer your question. So we need a doctor for the soul. That's why we need a guru. So that guy, from the second, after having studied all the darshana, he goes to the 3rd stage of what is called instruction. Parikshalokan, Veda says. Karmajanan brahmano nirvedamaya atmastikata kridena tad vijnanartam sa gurum eva vigachet samitpanihi shotrim brahmarishtam. So he finds a guru. He approaches. We hope he goes to a good guru. Why? What happens? Most of the time, they end up with a religious guru of sorts. You know what they do? Well, you have got all these questions. Good, very good. You have come to me. You know why you have got questions? Every day morning, you are only breaking one coconut. From tomorrow, you break 2 coconuts. All your problems will go. This is how they solve your problem. You know what I'm talking about? So the religious answers that you get, they don't take you anywhere. But an inquirer, it's not enough for him. So from the 3rd stage, he moves on to the 4th stage called Jnana. That is called Brahma Jnana. And Veda Vyasa made it indispensable for everybody. Brahma Jnana, Kartavya. I will end it there. I'm sure you will have a lot of questions.
Thank you. I'd like to say a word, if I may, about this.
1 second, Scott. So we'll give you the chance to speak then, Prasad. If you could keep it brief, we have one more question lined up here. Okay, go ahead. We'll give it to Stafford.
I just briefly want to say that I make a distinction between an informed faith and a blind faith. And I think that if you are the possessor of an informed faith, you're going to be looking to discover as much about science as you possibly can. And you want to work that into your faith. I know that's the way I proceed. I'll give you an example. In the book of Genesis, the universe is described as being created in 6 days. We know that that's nonsense. And we know it through science. Science told us that, the universe has evolved, and it's told us quite a bit about how it's done. And it seems to me that if we are not learning that fact from science, we're losing any intelligent, informed person to the faith. We need to tell our kids, we need to show our kids that we understand science and that our science amalgamates itself to our religion. That's fundamentally important, I think. Another thing that's, to give an example, we look at the universe of this beautifully ordered universe and we wonder, is there a God behind this? Is there a powerful, knowledgeable, omniscient, omnipotent God behind this universe? And it seems to me that the more we study science, the more we know about the universe, the more likely it seems that there is a magnificent power and intelligence behind the scale and the beauty, the grandeur, the immensity of the universe. You could think, well, maybe it just appeared. Some people think that. Apparently the Buddha just thought that. But I think that that's unreasonable because we look at the way our cities are built and what do we see behind these wonderful cities that we built? Great intelligence wedded to great power. Men, of course, are making cities, but the universe is something men can't do. We would think that there has to be something majestic and powerful and wonderful, and we call that God. And all of this is the way scientists think. It's the way I think, and I hope that all of you are happy to learn as much about science as possible and work it into your faith and become informed. Thank you.
Of course, the word we are using, the English words have its own limitation on connecting to our the words that we use. For example, the word Vijnana is used, as we know, and in the Panchakosha Viveka, as Dwarkanath knows very well, the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So there is that step of what is called as Vijnana. Vijnana refers to basically explaining what is already there. So Asti Brahmeti Ched Veda. So even if we take as a faith to start with, then the existence of Brahman is realized and experienced. There are sages who have. So there is a Pramana Vakya, Pramana Anubhava. If we take the 3 steps of any, whether scientific or otherwise, Vishaya, Prayoga, Anubhava. So there is a whole path in the path of yoga, for example, there are established methods. Only thing is the Brahmanda is taken, then it becomes so-called external science. Then the Pindanda is ourselves, this is the human body. So the object and the domain of science goes inward now. And there is a whole path here, and this consciousness word is a very dangerous word in a way. Because that word has not really been defined even anywhere. So, Chaitanya is the word that is supposed to be translated as consciousness. But the Chaitanya does not mean what it means, what people talk about conscious. Are you aware, are you conscious of surrounding? Chaitanya is not that. Chaitanyam sarvabhutanam yutam jagadatmana. So we can see that the whole thing is, it is a science. The word science itself is a vijnana. This is a atma vijnana. And from that it comes atma jnana. Science cannot explain, even in modern science, what is not there. There is no Akasha Pushpa. There is no child of a barren woman. No matter how much we explain that. So in a similar way, there is Brahman. And the question is how to experience, how to go about it. Then it becomes a Vijnana in its own way.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to ask a very topical question here. Over the last 20 years, there's been a battle in the US between schools, scientists, between evolution, creationism, and intelligent design. Is there anything in the corpus of Indian literature that addresses how we came to be from an evolutionary point or from intelligent design standpoint?
Yeah. This issue has been topical, as you said. The Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic view, does not agree with the conventionally understood Darwinian evolution. Because from a single-celled organism comes the human being, that whole, as we all know. The transformational or the cyclical theory of manifestation is avyakta and vyakta that Mani said. So this Vedic view is that the Manushya, the creation of the Manushya from the Sarrishi, from the Paramatman himself. But the evolutionary aspect is used in the process of the growth, like a child who are crawling to standing. So if we call that as a kind of physical level evolution, yes, that is there. Then in some of the animal species, the multiplication is all explained in terms of the natural selection, natural process. But what the Vedic view does not agree is this, the referred single-celled organism then came, and then from monkey, There's a lot of, that's not accepted scientific fact or something. That is a theory. Everybody has to know that. But what happens is many times people talk that solution has already been found and that's the way it is. And there is also a lot of, in those time of Darwinian evolution, there are a lot of politics also involved in that, why it came up that way. But there is a scientific politics kind of thing that happened. But coming to the Vedic view itself, it does not accept. And one question we may ask is, unless suppose one wants to take up this question itself, how did we get created, how did the universe created, and a person starts meditating, go into the Jnana Marga, because these are all Atindriya. It cannot be discussed in this Pratyaksha world and just like that. One has to go into the deeper states of transcendental states. Then what one sees, the Vedic literature has it. Vedahametam, we talked about it. Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam. The yoga describes all of that. In fact, even the established Rama, for example, how did the Rama's posture come? Yogis have seen the Rama's posture, Rama's murti. So how do we explain all of that? If no yogis have described that I was a monkey and then before that I was an amoeba and then there's no description of that. No, what I'm saying is that's a very important pramana we have to use. We cannot ignore.
Okay, so the next question, when you ask the question, please also say to whom it is addressed.
Yeah, sorry, I have just quick follow-up. Professor Berry, you mentioned about informed faith and following things blindly. So what we just heard about theory of evolution, if we had to say the Big Bang or the theory of evolution as we see from a Neanderthal to what we are today, is not informed faith. And if it goes against the Adam and Eve or the Manu concept that we have, what will follow?
Well, it seems to me that science has a lot to say about this. it's inconceivable that, as so many Christian fundamentalists believe to this very day, that the universe was created less than 10,000 years ago. We know that dinosaur bones in the core of the earth are at least 1 million years old. I beg your pardon, some of them are 100 million years old. Science tells us this. So science tells us a great deal that invalidates some of these old superstitions that formed part of an earlier people's religion. We've simply grown beyond that kind of faith. That faith is primitive, and we need to dismiss it, or at least we need to appreciate it as just part of our ancient tradition, but we don't need to feel time-bound by that. We need to move ahead with science, and that doesn't mean that we are less likely to believe in God, less likely to believe in the power of prayer, and all of those valid parts of religion. They are in no way, in my view, attacked by a knowledge of modern science. So I say, we want it all. We want to know as much about science and as much about the depths of our own souls as we possibly can. I don't know if that directly answered you, but thank you.
Can I?
Just to add a couple of things for that, the same question. Informed faith means when there's a clash between science and religion, the science that's based on the facts, that is scientific facts. We're not talking about scientific theories like a Darwinism. That's not a fact. So the scientific facts, they have to be accepted as is. The pratyaksha, parikshita pratyaksha takes the highest precedence. There's nothing that can be refuted in parikshita pratyaksha. That means the tested direct perception has to be taken as is and unquestionable, and has to penetrate into the religion or any field. That's what is informed faith means. That means that takes highest precedence.
Yeah. This is for all of you. I think I want to follow up on what Jnaana said when it comes to intelligent design. If I remember correctly, Rigveda is very clear in Nasadiya Sutta that it is not at all clear about everything. It doesn't have a definitive opinion about the exact origin of this universe. It clearly states, many Upanishads clearly state, this is what we have heard. That being the case, I would request to the panelists to help us understand how are you so clearly and definitely answering, saying Vedas do not agree with this. Yeah, the Nasadiya Sutta should not be taken at the level of perception that we are talking here. Even the Pratyaksha also has to be understood in a different way. What I see from the naked eye need not be Pratyaksha. Because naked eye, we know that as the age goes, the blindness, so what is seen by the naked eye need not be true at all actually. So Pratyaksha itself has to be inner eye. If you are talking of the inner eye, the inner yogic darshana, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. The Rishis talks about that. No Rishis have talked about the external view and this is how it is. So the inner eye comes from the yoga sadhana. And from that, when the Nasadiya Sutta mantras came, they were not talking in a materialistic world with all things around. They were talking at the highest state of experience that they had, which cannot be explained. It is a statement of wonder. It is not a statement of ignorance. We have to be very clear in that. I have heard this Nasadiya Sutta argument in dozens of places. It's incorrect to even think like that. These rishis were great. They were not ordinary people. So we have to, when even ourselves, if we eat some good jamun, people cannot explain that. Oh, I don't know, it was so wonderful. What is wonderful? Tell me. Nobody talks about it. So what I am saying is, Nasadiya Sutta was not a question of explanation of the ignorance. Oh, we didn't know, we don't know. It's not that. They reach such a state of experience. This whole cosmos, I mean, imagine that state of experience, even in that sense they have told, that's one thing. Then the question of the Vedic view, the Agama has to be taken as, the only answer that one can get is one has to go through the yoga sadhana and one should realize within oneself. That is the only way, it is. So that's all the Vedas say. You go through, it is an individual experience of internal domain. The answer is that. So, till that extent, we have to accept the Vedas, which is saying that this and this Dashavatara, I just touch upon that. That is also a very wrong notion that is being prevalent. Dashavatara is not to prove this evolution principle. Dashavatara to show the omni energy of the Lord. This Lord cannot be, he is a Kalpanatita. Sarva Lakshana Vilakshana, says Ramananda in one word. There is no comparison for God in this world. There is nobody can even dream of comparing to anything. Then, because in Matsya Avatara, there were Rakshasas there already. Rakshasas are not ordinary people, they are evolved people in certain bad qualities. So they were there already, and Kurma was all, the Rakshasas were there already along with the Avatar Rahasya. It is a Rahasya of the Bhagavan. So from that way we have to understand.
No, but given the sequence, are they hinting at?
No.
No, even the avatara that they mentioned, that sequence is not exactly that sequence it happened. Actually, the sequence, we are listing in that sequence, but avatara did not happen exactly in that sequence. We have to realize that.
Right. Avatara, Bhagavata goes 24 avatara. Mohini is avatara. Kapila is an avatara. So we have to bring all of that.
I know a few Rakshasas on Wall Street.
We'll move on to the next question. Who has the next question, please? Okay, Nandini, go ahead.
So namaskara to everybody. Very glad to be in the presence of all of you. So my question goes to Dr. Jnaana Samgama. So one of my questions is that you spoke about science being very probabilistic and involving multiple facets and to come to a conclusion. So, but Vedas, Shrutis, Smritis, Puranas, everything has a component of science involved in it. Like for example, astronomy or Ayurveda. So when it is mentioned in the Vedas, then why don't you make us youngsters go through science to understand what God is and the presence of God?
That's what already Prasad was telling. Science is all part of this religion, already is there. There is nothing separate from that. It is all already there. But what we are trying to only tell is, there are certain things you will be able to comprehend through your instruments of perception. Certain things you cannot. And what you cannot, for that you have to have some pramanam for that. For that you use the scriptures, the Shruti. What Shruti says, you take it as pramanam, or for those things for which you don't have a direct method of cognition. That's what this says. It never excluded science any time. Because many of these analyses are very scientific. There is nothing different from science at all. It's a wrong perception to think that religion, this faith and science are in loggerheads. No, not at all. They are complementary. But science is only part of that. We don't have to try to fit the larger scope of Vedanta and beliefs on all these things into the frame of science and then try to say everything should be explicable in this manner. It's not possible. But this is part of it already. Where we can understand, of course we will. Where we don't have to, let us not immediately discount that it doesn't exist. I cannot understand. That's what I should say. Within my elements of perception, I am not able to understand. Because, for example, even simple things we know in our experience. There is an audible limit within which you can hear. Beyond that, you cannot hear. Maybe a fish can hear, a bird can hear. So what I cannot hear, I cannot say. But science has established that. We have used, but rishis have already told that. What the rishis have told, you had an opportunity. That's why I told about the time frame also in the dream time and this time. When they say all these millions of years and all that thing, even for every day we experience, every moment we experience Brahman. It is not a separate experience that is going to come tomorrow. Only we are not aware of it. Every moment, when you had a sound sleep, you went to sleep and you got up and you say you had a sound sleep. It's not a sound sleep, snoring sleep, it's a sound sleep. How did you know? Because at that time all your sense organs have resolved. How do you know? That Avastatraya Sakshi, that Brahman, that existed in all the three domains of time, wakeful, dream, and deep sleep states. That is how you knew, and you said, yes, I had a glimpse. So, science is not discounted. But we are trying to tell, in Vedanta there is nothing like a probability, because that is not comprehensible by science to say certain things. So, we have to understand our limitations. Vedanta, religion never excluded science. They are part of it. When I say I am, when I say you are, your arness and my amness, what is that? That is Chaitanya. That is consciousness. Loosely translated as is a consciousness. Chaitanyam is that. So whenever we say enjoy, enjoy in Tamil means enjoy means my joy. Enjoy. Enjoy is joy. En, what is that en? Who is that en? En is that Chaitanya. So that is how we should relate to everything as Brahman only. That knowledge has to come. And that is where the Vijnana, all these analyses going through various koshas and all that thing, Vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect, and then Anandamaya kosha, when you go through, this is analysis. What is there already, you are trying to analyze. Mimamsa does it. All these things they try to logically explain, but that's all we are trying to do. But whatever exists, exists. Some of them have Kevala Satta. Kevala Satta is just mere existence. Some of them have got awareness. Chitta is there. So Chitta and Satta, the inert objects and all that things, the awareness principle is not there. Satta is there. The isness, amness is there. Satta is there. Whereas where there is Chitta is there in these things. So that is why the entire scientific domain, whatever we have, see and perceive, anything today, they are all part of our religious faith. That's why particularly I alluded to Sanatana Dharma. Because there is nothing that is told here that is told elsewhere. It is so comprehensive and so completely outlining everything together in Srishti. If you want, today we want to understand Srishti from time zero, there should be a time zero, it started and should have gone in this book. That's what we think. That is our line of thinking has been made because we were not tuned to the way of Vedantic thinking. If you think Vedantic thinking, you will discount all these. I was not an amoeba, amoebas are there. We don't say all that. They are all there, no problem at all. They all existed. In our time domains, what? 432,000 years is Kali Yuga. Twice that is Dwapara, thrice that is Treta, 4 times that is Satya Yuga, all 4,320,000 years. There are all these time domains. And you put all of them, find out the age of Brahma and try to correlate it with the time of universe today. People put there all these equations and say, okay, this is so many millions of years. It correlates. Only to satisfy ourselves. But they were all there in a different. So the rishis, they are not ordinary people. And they could exist in those yugas because the yugas were congenial for that. Satya Yuga, their lifetimes were all very, very long. How long they lived? We don't want to live even for 100 years based on the universe that we have today. But they live for how long? That means what? The mind, the situation, the environment was such they could live healthily with least kind of requirements, with so much of very alert mind, giving rise to so much of thinking, to look at these vibrations that exist and then bring those mantras to us, which were not. They were all mantra drashtas. They didn't write any mantras themselves. They were all mantra drashtas. They saw them and they told this to. So that is how our system says, and that is why in our system, in our faith, in all they say about the Upanishads and all that thing, what our word is, so kamayata bhavusyam praja yayeti, by mere sankalpa, he made. Now we are building cities and all that thing, it takes a lot of time, and to build a house, you know how much it takes. But by mere sankalpa, the Lord became many. By mere sankalpa. So that kind of a thing is those powers. Trishanka Sauka was made by Vishwamitra just instantly. So we build cities just like that in the scriptures. So all these things, they have a different type of approach, even in the way we try to reason them out. That's what we should be. We should permit ourselves to think it in that dimension, then we will have no problem. Otherwise, we will always try to fit everything into these 4 frames of the science or whatever it is. Science is not separate from us, it is part of us.
Thank you, sir.
Informed religion and science, they are not at loggerheads actually. The informed religion and science, they complement each other. They are not at loggerheads, nor they are identical. That means everything in informed religion cannot be explained through science, but they complement each other.
Who's the next question, please? Can we pass on the mic then? While that's happening, let me ask you a question, sir, while the mic's going here. There's a question. She got it. So after that, I'll ask.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I just want to know, is there any scientific research done to justify prayer?
Is there any scientific research done to justify prayer?
I mean, things are happening already which give some glimpses of prayer. You don't need any more human-created experiment. So, pralaya basically means prakrishta layam. That is in the larger scale you can imagine the absorption. And as the Vedic view is cyclical creation, so Srishti Sthiti Laya. So Laya always happens even any event. Every event goes through this Srishti Sthiti Laya, Srishti Sthiti Laya. So this universe that we see in whether you take any yuga, the Kruta Yuga of this Manvantara, you had Srishti Sthiti Laya, Srishti Sthiti Laya, Srishti Sthiti Laya. So Pralaya is something that is natural and expected, and indications are already there. So that itself is the proof.
I don't think there's any research that's being done to study pralaya.
One thing I would want to say is that up until about 20 years ago, scientists thought that the universe would collapse back upon itself, that gravity would draw it back into a kind of pralaya. Now we know better, that the universe is expanding indefinitely and infinitely, so there's no chance of a pralaya in that sense anyway.
Thank you.
Actually, this pralaya concept is not just the only pralaya. Every day we go through pralaya, every day in the deep sleep. So that every day we go through that. This is pralaya. In the deep sleep we go through pralaya every day. Just extrapolate that. That's all you have to do. It is going to take at some point in time also, it will take. But you want to have a research to prove that there is no such research. No, nobody wants to really do research on pralaya. So no such thing is going on there.
I have a question related to that one. I read in some papers that sun is going to collapse in the 6.5 billion years. What is going to happen this Punarjanma and all?
I can guarantee one thing, we won't be there. Not in this form.
We'll take one more question. Okay, I'll take one here and one from the back. Deepti, you had your chance, sorry. Okay, there's one. So Gayatri and Nagalakshmi. So go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much for all the answers and nice panel. Thank you very much. In connection with the question about pralaya, I don't know how we can link what I'm about to say. I remember when we used to study the thermodynamics, I don't know how many of people know it. Of course, those who know it, the third law says the entropy of the universe is tending to maximum. The entropy explanation is nothing but disorderliness, which we are seeing already all over the universe happening. So, another explanation of entropy is the temperature of the universe going up and up and up. So, I remember strongly listening to somebody saying, some scientist, I don't remember who it was, where the science ends, the religion starts explaining it. So, because the third law extension, the universe is going to, the heat is going to be so much, it will be Agni Pradaya, So the entropy of the universe is tending to maximum, the heat of the universe is going up, and finally we will have the Agni Pralaya. That's what it was, that I remember vaguely. So that's why if you have anything to say about it, I appreciate it.
No, only thing is the Agni Pralaya takes time, Jala Pralaya is immediate. So let us not compete with Jala Pralaya, because all the ocean water comes out, that's it, the matter is done. So, but regarding the entropy, this orderliness disorderliness increasing, it is an observation that happens in individual lives also, right, to some extent, and people come back and use renewable energy and bring the order back. In a similar way, we as humanity, of course this is a very serious question in terms of what we are doing to our Mother Earth, planet Earth. So the global warming and all this. So it is a human concern that we are overusing the Mother Earth through various greeds and uncontrolled desire. So that is the approach we have to take, in terms of that.
I just want to point out that entropy has been misunderstood. Entropy actually is the cooling down of the universe, and eventually it's going to die of a lack of energy, not of too much. It's not going to explode in a great ball of flame, for example.
We'll have Jai Krishna respond to that question, then we'll go to Nagalakshmi, and then Jyoti and Deepti.
I just want to say a word about where science ends, philosophy begins, that come to me. You know, for us to know where science ends, for you to be, an expert in that field, isn't it? For somebody to talk about thermodynamics, whatever the latest and greatest research is on thermodynamics, you should have studied physics for at least 30 years or so and done a lot of research, postdoc and whatnot. But if you come to Vedanta, it takes you the human border of knowledge the very first day itself. You don't have to wait for 30 years. You study Veda, you will understand what I am talking.
Next question, please.
Namaste everyone. We had a very nice time since yesterday. We shared a lot of knowledge with us. I have a question. We have so many religions in this world. Try to understand gods, try to understand this universe. We see that in some parts of the world there is clashes in the name of religion and violences. So can religion bring awareness to people to stop these clashes or violence?
Bhagavad Gita was taught in a war field. Is it not so? I mean, I didn't make Bhagavad Gita. So, war field itself is not bad. But, what are you fighting for? Arjuna thought he is going to kill all these people unnecessarily. Narayana Tvita, Tanarubandha Nigraham. Sri Krishna corrects him. Well, all these people have gone against the one cause of all. That's why the Duryodhana, the chief, and all his followers, the Bhishma, Drona, who supported him because of that. For that reason, to kill them is your Kshatriya Dharma. See that, how it works? Why? Because it is the one God that is doing it all. Arjuna thinks he is the killer. Krishna corrects him, no sir, you are not the killer, I am the killer. Maya hatam tvanjayima vyatishta vijjasvajeta sirane sabatma. He even predicts what's going to happen later. I have already killed all these Drona and Bhishma. They are waiting for your arrow to go and touch them, that's all. You do it. Therefore, but what happens in this world, this is Bhagavad Gita. But in the modern day world, people are confused about their own dependence on that higher principle. They're mixing it up with that. If I go and kill these infidels, that God has to give me this and these things are promised. Now what kind of a God is he? That God is my slave now because he has to give it back if I do something. He is not the all-potent, omnipotent God at all. So although they mention the word God in the name of God, their concept of God is quite anti-Vedic. You should understand that. So the God that we talk about in our Hindu religion is a Vedic God. Shrutyukta Parabrahman. That's how you should understand God. Because there are a lot of gods coming from a lot of religions also. Some of them are very violent. In the name of religions, violence has taken place in the history of the world. But were they talking about a Vedic God? That's the question.
Actually, the ones that are fighting in the name of the religion are the ones who don't know anything about the religion.
That's really true. The key is education. Just as you say, the more we know about the other guy's religion, really know and understand, the more tolerant we're likely to be, the more appreciative of the other person's religions we're likely to be. It's very important to have world religions taught at every university. I have found that really opens minds, surprisingly, and creates a kind of a pluralistic perspective, and at least a tolerance of what is alien, and a less of a willingness to slaughter that which one doesn't understand or doesn't quite approve of. So education is really the key. I don't think it's a guarantee, but it is about the only thing we can do at this point.
Thank you, sir. One question there. Please make it quick, 30 seconds each question. 30 seconds each.
Hello, thank you very much for enlightening us on a variety of issues. But my question / comment concerns Dr. Jnaana Samgama's reference to conscience. We certainly have made a lot of progress in understanding the brain over the last 15 years. And to preface this, one of the earliest discoveries of Parkinson's disease was noted about 4,000 to 6,000 years ago from Ayurveda, and they originally identified the disease as Kampavata. And it's heartening to realize that the medicine, plant medicine that prescribed for that situation was the first generation of medicine that's used for Parkinson's disease in some parts even now. So we can pat ourselves in the back, the Ayurveda followers, that we have done something such long time ago and is still the basis of Parkinson's medication. Now that apart, my issue is with conscience. We have learned a lot about learning, memory, and cognition, of course. And
sir, with due respect, your question, yes, please.
I'm just making a coming to conscience. So when you're making a lot of progress about learning and memory, you are building steps towards understanding conscience. Conscience is something that the human brain, which we all know is the fastest one, I guess, as far as I'm concerned, that's so far checked, faster than any of the fast brains that we have made. But the thing is, the conscience is, whenever the brain is challenged with a dilemma to go left or right, it's an involuntary reaction from the brain to produce a solution for the dilemma. So the conscience is something that you can simply put is whatever the brain has learned in its life experience is giving involuntarily you a solution to attack this problem this way. So that's a primitive definition of conscience that you can go by, and you can, of course, there's no direct work to check conscience, but my comment is to say that conscience there's preliminary work being done to address that problem.
I have a lot to say about that actually, but I'll say it shortly. I want to get back to this gentleman's question right at the very beginning of the session. What is the relationship of consciousness to religion? And I think I know how to answer that. I've had to think about that for the last hour. First of all, a materialist thinks that all of our conscious experience comes from electrochemical events in the brain. And when the brain is sick, we don't think very well. And when the brain dies, that's the end of us. Now, if that is in fact the case, that's the end of religion, because there's no moksha. Without moksha, what do we have? So materialism is a dead end for religion. Now, the alternative is to see the brain as an instrument of the soul, as an instrument of consciousness. Now, the instrument has to work well if we're going to think clearly. Otherwise, if it's not healthy, it's like a virus in a computer. You know very well that when that happens, you're not able to communicate well. There's nothing wrong with you, but the instrument is faulty, so you're not able to communicate well. Now, what happens at death, hopefully it's this way, and I believe it is, and I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest it, is that we, not being the brain, not being the product of the brain, but merely using the brain as its instrument for as long as we are connected to bodies, at that point, we sever our relationship with the body and the brain, and we go on. There's more life, there's reincarnation, and eventually there's moksha. So it's critical that we think of consciousness in this way, or religion is worthless and futile and irrelevant.
Thank you.
I'll just add a few things. The consciousness that I am talking about is, as Prasad said, is Chaitanya. Brain, mind, they are all grouped as inert matter in Vedanta. We have got the gross body, the one that you see, the subtle body made up of 17 elements, the 5 jnanendriyas, 5 karmendriyas, pancha pranadaya, mind, intellect, chitta and ahankara also. Now when I say 5 sense organs, jnanendriyas, the eye that you see is called the Golakam. But the power behind the seeing is called jnanendriyam. So here, ear is Golakam, is inert. Power behind hearing, that is called Shrotrendriyam. Now all these things when we say, they are all inert, they are all matter. But they become sentient because of the manifestation of Chaitanya in them. When the ability to manifest Chaitanya in them vanishes, then they become dead. But the Sukshma Shariram, consisting of mind and all, that has got the vasanas of all your karmas, that moves after a person dies. So when we say consciousness, consciousness is not in conscience in those terms, it is Chaitanya. Blessed by Chaitanya, they all function. Now, what is that thing that makes me sentient? For science, it's a long time to find out. Because we still think of brain and all as our Betty was mentioning about the electrochemical reactions and all those things, they are all fine. We can understand all that. They are all matter still. But what makes it sentient, that is the study about consciousness with capital C, Chaitanya. That is going to be ever a mystery, because if you can understand that only Jnani can do that, then Jnani is, well, he got moksha already. So when we say consciousness, that is what we mean. So we try to relate to that with all these other methods and other things, which is very, very difficult to understand. I understand the progress of science made. We got cure for a lot of diseases, no problem. That's all great. Medicine's advancement, science's advancement, technology advancement. We cannot almost live today without a cell phone. It looks like that almost. So we all know the benefit of all that. But we have to understand it's all inclusive, but this cannot definitely unravel what the mysteries in Vedanta and the religion gives.
Thank you, sir. If you have any closing words for this panel before we turn it over to Swamiji?
Well,
Excuse me, I had a question.
somebody has the last question. Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
My question was why in Hinduism we have all the rituals we have, such as like dressing up a deity or singing when we have our festivals, and is God really meant to be taken literally?
Well, actually, to be honest, this is the way we practice it, because our ultimate aim for anybody in this Janma, ultimate aim is supposed to gain liberation or moksha, to get out of the cycle of birth and death. And that we believe is done through the knowledge, self-knowledge of who you are, so that you know, you don't think that you are the body, you are the Chaitanyam and all that. But all that knowledge will come only when the mind is pure. So you need what is known as Chitta Shuddhi, you need. And for that, I cannot just go and buy Chitta Shuddhi in Macy's, buy one get one free. It is a lifelong process, or it can be several lifelong processes for people, because the crack in the mind is so much. God has enabled us to see all other parts. I can see your eyes, your ear, your hand, everything. I cannot see your mind. If I can see the mind of people, we really don't want to see the minds of other people. How the mind will become pure? For that, instead of just only prescribing you should have purity of mind, our scriptures also enabled us to find a way by which it can be purified through a lot of disciplines. And many of the samskaras, rituals and all, they are geared towards that thing. For example, worship the Lord, then ahankara goes away, you think there is somebody supreme, and you have to go and surrender unto them. The ego goes. So everything is an exercise towards that goal. So they designed it in some way, which is based on certain circumstantial things, based on certain worship, Puranic things, all those stories. They made a life as a process in which every day you will think that's a purpose for that, and you will live through that. It is not hard and fast rule that should be done only in that manner. It could be if somebody can get purity by doing only pure social service, fine, he can become a karma yogi, no problem at all. But after that, he cannot stop there. For getting moksha, this is not adequate. He is still an ajnani. If he has to go to moksha, he has to go through Jnana Marga still. So you can become a karma yogi, get purified in the mind through other methods also. But our religion prescribes this method. And in another thing also, in our religion, people normally think social service is not part of it. We have got both Ishti and Purta Dharmas, both. Ishti refers to all these worship and rituals, sangyas and all that. Purta Dharma is building hospitals, building social service places, orphanages, educating a child. They are all Purta Dharma. Both are part of it. So as much as you do that, in every worship we have a community element. So many people are felt. This is a forum for so many social people to come and meet and all. So it has made the entire thing in a holistic approach, not just an individual discrete approach. You go pray for 1 day, 1 hour, someplace. You will live every moment of your life according to the tenets of this discipline, because the goal is the highest lofty goal, namely reaching moksha. That is why they are. I need any more concluding remarks. I think Swami should be a Swamiji now.
We'll invite Srimati Meera Tadapatri to come on stage, please.
But I think all of us, we have tasted the butter and we challenge the curd, and so that now we are going to return his journey Lord to Lord Krishna, and we thank him. Today, the session we have had a good discussion about Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, and Mr. Prasada has given the good message of Dharma. The end of the panel discussion also, it has come Ishtapurtam Manyamana Vrishtam. So Ishtapurta is the first dharma, and to approach God we should cultivate. And Tritiyacha Pratikartavyam Yesha Dharma Sanatanaha. So we have come to this earth not to consume, but we have to give something to the world and something to God. That is the dharma. So if we share our views and knowledge, and then it is Dharma. Today, I think this Jnana Samgama is also the great Dharma. Because we share our views each together according to Bhagavad Gita, Parasparam Bhavayanta Shreya Paramavapsata. So, how to develop the knowledge? No one will come and give this knowledge, take. No. We should share our knowledge and we should develop ourselves. So, if you develop the judging capacity, then only we can have the light. So the essence of Dharma is increasing our judging capacity. If we increase the judging capacity, that is the ultimate Dharma. And today, we are very glad to have that kind of churning here and sharing our knowledge and strengthening our Atma Shakti. So at the end of that, we had the science and science and religion. So I want to say that what means religion and what means rituals. That's what means spirituality. The spirit behind the rituals is real spirituality. So if you conclude this one, then we know everything. We know science and religion, everything. The main mistake we have done is we separated science from philosophy, which is the greatest science. So we should know that the greatest science is nothing but philosophy. So what we think only physical philosophy, physical science is only the science, but Adhyatma Vijnana is the greatest science in this world. Once we come to know that, then this Jnana Samgama will be more fruitful. I'm very glad to have this unique program in Sri Krishna Vrindavana, which is very much favorable. And we had many this kind of Jnana Samgama previously also, but I thought it is only Sagoshti Pradhapa. So I wanted to share the different views and different people, and so it should be all together. So that is why I view the East meets West. So I'm very, this is the session, that's a global Vakyartha, so global Goshti. I think this is the first time Eastern philosophers and Western philosophers, they come together and they have shared their views so that it will be the betterment of all sadhakas and it is the betterment of everyone. So I'm congratulating everyone, not only scholars but also Jnanasu here. For without you, all our efforts will be waste, because all of you encourage and you got the knowledge, like calf takes the milk from the cow. So you have taken the knowledge from the scholars. But that is the symbol of Lord Krishna. Krishna is always doing like this and Jnana Mudra. So we should milk the milk and we should develop and we should lead our spiritual life in better way. So I am very glad to notice the Jnana Samgama is unique and it is very successful. Once again, now I have the confidence that this kind of effort will produce more things for the sadhaka. So we are going to develop this, and in Sri Krishna Vrindavana, this kind of program will be more. I am very glad to notice the success of this program. And once again, I pray Lord Sri Krishna to bless all the devotees here.